Historians agree pig farmers in Tudor England had literally the worst job in human history. While nobles slept on featherbeds behind curtained four-posters, Tudor pig keepers woke up covered in mud, straw, and things I'd rather not mention. And yet, according to royal records, these people were actually happy. The king's own chroniclers noted that pig farmers whistled while they worked, sang while they slopped, and generally seemed more content than the wealthy merchants who could afford actual baths. Either Tudor pig farmers were clinically insane, or they knew something about life that we've completely forgotten. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Okay, tonight it's Tudor England. But wait, are you comfortable? I mean properly comfortable. Fluff those pillows, grab your blanket. You're gonna be here a while. The chill hits you first, like daggers slicing through your lungs. Even before your eyes snap open, your body knows something's wrong. The damp straw underneath you has worked its way through your threadbare wool blanket during the night, and now your back is pressed against the hard-packed earthen floor. January in England, 1536, and the frost has crept in under the door of your one-room cottage like a thief. Your name is Thomas Fletcher, tenant pig farmer to Winchcombe Abbey, and unlike your soft, warm bed back in reality, your Tudor sleeping arrangement is basically a pile of straw thrown in the corner farthest from the door to minimise the draft. No mattress, no springs, certainly no memory foam. You're 38 years old, which basically makes you ancient in Tudor times, and every morning your body reminds you of this fact with new and exciting pains. Saints preserve us, you mutter, your breath forming clouds in the freezing air, too bloody cold to live. You're not alone in this tiny house. Your wife Eleanor lies curled beside you, her body heat the only thing that kept you from freezing entirely during the night. Your three surviving children, Agnes, 12, William, 9, and little Mary, 4, are huddled together in another pile of straw near the dying embers of last night's fire. One small window with an oiled parchment covering lets in just enough pre-dawn light for you to make out their sleeping forms. Wait, what? You're probably thinking 3 surviving children. Yeah, this is Tudor England, where having a child was basically rolling dice with death. Eleanor has been pregnant 7 times. 4 living children is actually considered lucky. Your oldest son, John, works as an apprentice to the village blacksmith now. You miss him, but it means 1 less mouth to feed. The cottage is a single room with walls made of wattle and daub, basically woven sticks plastered with a mixture of mud, clay, and animal dung. The roof is thatched with reeds from the nearby river, and while it generally keeps out the rain, it also houses an impressive colony of mice and the occasional bird. At the centre of the room is the hearth, just a circle of stones with a hole in the roof above it to let out the smoke. Emphasis on some of the smoke. The rest just hangs around inside, which explains why everything you own, including your lungs, is coated with a fine layer of soot. Thomas, Eleanor murmurs beside you, stirring. The pigs. Ah yes, the pigs. Always the pigs. You sit up, wincing as your back protests. Your knees crack like kindling as you stand, and for a moment you sway, dizzy from hunger. The last proper meal was yesterday at midday, and even that was just a hunk of brown bread and some turnip pottage. January is always the hardest month. The winter stores are running low, and it'll be months before the new crops come in. You pull on your leather boots, stiff with cold, and reach for your woolen cap. No Tudor farmer would go outside bareheaded, not even to check on the pigs. It's not just about keeping warm going hatless was considered borderline indecent. Besides, your head is basically one giant bald spot these days, with just a fringe of grey hair around the edges. The cold would go straight to your brain without protection. "I'll get the fire going," Eleanor says, sitting up and reaching for her kirtle, the basic dress that Tudor women wore. Over it she'll put her bodice and apron before the day is done, but for early morning chores the kirtle is enough. "Mind the kindling," you remind her, "when I'm She gives you a look that clearly says, "I've been making fires since before you had that paunch, Thomas Fletcher," but all she says is, "I'll send Agnes to gather more when it's light." You reach for your jerkin, a sleeveless leather garment worn over your linen shirt, and pull it on. No time to change the shirt. You've been wearing this one for... Actually, you're not sure how long. Tudor hygiene isn't exactly rigorous. You'll get a clean shirt for Sunday Mass. But it's only Tuesday. "William," you call softly to your son. "Up with you, lad. Pigs need feeding." The boy groans but stirs. At 9, he's already an essential part of the farm's workforce. Childhood is brief in Tudor England. By 6 or 7, kids are expected to contribute, and by 12 or 13, they're basically doing adult work. William has been helping with the pigs since he could walk. "Coming, father," he mumbles, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Outside, the world is still dark, but there's a hint of grey in the eastern sky. It's probably around 5:30 in the morning, though you don't own a clock. Time is marked by church bells, the position of the sun, and the insistent squealing of hungry pigs. And speaking of pigs, yours are already awake and demanding breakfast with an ungodly chorus of grunts and squeals. Your pig enterprise consists of 2 breeding sows, a boar, and currently 11 piglets of various ages, plus 1 old sow that's destined for slaughter come Martinmas in November. The pig pen is a structure known as a hog bog, and honestly, it's one of the cleverest things about Tudor farming. It's a 2-story affair with the pigs living on the ground level and chickens above. The chickens' droppings fall through the slatted floor into the pig enclosure below, where the pigs, who will literally eat anything, happily consume them. It's efficient, if disgusting by modern standards. "Sounds like demons," William says, as you both approach the hog bog, referring to the squealing pigs. "Sometimes I wonder," you reply, smiling despite yourself. "Get the slops bucket." The slops are a revolting mixture of kitchen waste, food scraps, vegetable peelings, stale ale, whey, leftover from cheese making, and basically anything else too spoiled or unpalatable for human consumption. Tudor pigs weren't fed expensive grain, they were nature's garbage disposals. The difference between Tudor pigs and the pink porkers you might be picturing is striking. These creatures are more like wild boars, long-legged, bristly, and fiercely intelligent. The boar, whom you've named Brutus for his betraying ways, he once bit clean through your boot, has actual tusks and a temper to match. He's currently separated from the sows to prevent unplanned breeding. "Stay back from Brutus," you warn William unnecessarily. The boy is wary of the boar after seeing what those tusks did to a neighbour's dog that got too close to the pen. As you swing open the rough wooden gate to the sow enclosure, the smell hits you like a physical force. Pig waste, mud, rotting food, and the musty odour of animal hair combine into a stench that would make a modern person gag. But to you, it's just Tuesday. "Here, girls," you call, upending the slops bucket into their trough. The sows push each other aside in their eagerness to eat, their piglets squirming between their legs for a share. Tudor pigs are valuable animals. Each sow can produce up to 12 piglets twice a year. The piglets can be sold at market, kept to increase your herd, or fattened for meat. A pig can be converted into bacon, ham, sausages, lard, and even medicines. Their bristles make brushes, their skin makes leather, their bones make glue, and their bladders can be dried into containers or even children's toys. As the saying goes, you use everything but the squeal. Father, look, William points to one of the sows, Mabel, your best breeder. She's bleeding. You lean over the pen wall, heart sinking. Sure enough, there's blood on Mabel's hind leg and she's favouring it, keeping weight off. Damn, you mutter, forgetting to mind your language around the boy. Something's cut her, probably a nail sticking out somewhere. This is a serious problem. In an age before antibiotics, even a small wound can fester and kill a valuable animal, and Mabel is very valuable indeed, worth almost as much as your cottage itself. What do we do? William asks, wide-eyed. We'll need to clean it, you say, calculating quickly. Get the small rope from the hook by the door. While William runs to fetch the rope, you climb over the pen wall, sinking ankle-deep in muck. Mabel eyes you suspiciously. Though somewhat domesticated, these pigs are still half wild and can be dangerous when injured or frightened. Easy, girl, you murmur, approaching slowly with your hand outstretched. Easy now. When William returns with the rope, you fashion a quick snare and, with a deftness born of long practice, loop it around Mabel's snout. She squeals in protest, but the snare keeps her from biting as you examine the wound. It's a nasty gash, probably from a broken board with a nail or splinter. These hogbogs require constant maintenance, but wood is expensive and you've been patching rather than replacing. Hold her steady, you tell William, who grabs the rope with both hands, planting his feet. From your belt pouch, you take a small jar of salve, a mixture of honey, which prevents infection, and comfrey, which speeds healing. Eleanor makes it each summer when the herbs are fresh, storing it in clay pots for the winter. It's one of many home remedies that Tudor farmers rely on, having no access to doctors or apothecaries except in dire emergencies. Mabel screams when you apply the salve, a sound so human-like it raises goosebumps on your arms. The other pigs grow agitated, rushing around the pen and adding their voices to the unholy chorus. Almost done, you assure the pig, though of course she doesn't understand. You wrap a strip of linen around her leg, tying it securely. It won't stay on long, pigs are too clever and determined for that, but it might keep the wound clean for a few crucial hours. Will she be all right? William asks as you climb back over the wall, your boots now twice as heavy with mud. If God wills it, you reply, the standard Tudor answer to any question about the future. In truth, you've done all you can. The rest is indeed up to God, or luck, or whatever forces govern the lives of Tudor pig farmers. As you secure the gate, you notice the first proper light of dawn breaking over the fields. The monastery bells ring out prime, the first canonical hour of the day, roughly 6 a.m. Your day has officially begun, though you've already been working for half an hour. We need to fix that pen today, you tell William as you head back to the cottage for a meagre breakfast. Can't risk losing Mabel. The boy nods seriously. At 9, he already understands the precariousness of your existence. One dead sow could mean the difference between surviving the winter and starving. Back at the cottage, Eleanor has the fire blazing, its warm light turning the humble space almost cozy. Agnes is grinding grain in a small hand quern for the day's bread, while little Mary plays with a corn dolly on the floor. Mabel's hurt her leg, you inform Eleanor as you enter. Used some of the honey salve. She nods, not looking up from the pot she's stirring. Bad? Bad enough, you reply, warming your hands by the fire. Breakfast is a simple affair, a thin porridge made from oats, flavoured with a precious pinch of salt. No sugar, of course. Sugar is for the nobility, not for tenant farmers. You eat from wooden bowls with wooden spoons, sitting on three-legged stools around the fire. We'll need to repair the hog bog today, you tell Eleanor between mouthfuls, the south wall's rotting through. The steward's coming, she reminds you, for the quarter rent. You suppress a groan. The monastery of Winchcombe owns this land, and you pay rent quarterly, part in money, part in goods. January's payment includes one of your precious piglets, which cuts into your profits significantly. Which one will we give, you ask, though you already know the answer. The spotted male, Eleanor replies. He's the smallest. You nod. It makes sense to keep the largest, healthiest piglets for breeding or fattening, but it still stings to give away an animal you've raised from birth. As the family finishes breakfast, you outline the day's tasks. William will help you repair the hog bog. Agnes will take the sheep to pasture and gather kindling. Eleanor will work on spinning wool, a vital secondary income for the household. Little Mary is still too young for serious work, though she'll help Eleanor by carding wool. And after the hog bog is fixed, you continue, we need to check the forest edge for fallen branches. We're low on firewood. Technically, the forest belongs to the monastery too, and taking timber is forbidden, but fallen branches are generally overlooked, especially for a tenant in good standing. Still, you'll send William rather than going yourself. A child is more likely to receive mercy if caught. As you speak, there's a knock at the door, a rare enough occurrence to silence the whole family. Eleanor rises to answer it, smoothing her kirtle nervously. The door opens to reveal Brother Thomas, a young monk from the monastery who serves as assistant to the steward. His brown habit is clean and neat, a stark contrast to your mud-spattered clothing. "Good morrow, Mistress Fletcher," he says politely, though his nose wrinkles slightly at the cottage's smoky interior and unwashed occupants. "Brother Thomas," Eleanor curtsies, "we weren't expecting the steward until afternoon." "Steward Blackwell has been delayed at the miller's," Brother Thomas explains. "He sent me to inform you that he'll come tomorrow instead." You feel a wave of relief. One more day to prepare the piglet for transfer and to scrape together the coin portion of your rent. "Thank you for the message," you say, rising from your stool. "Will you take some ale before you go?" It's the polite thing to offer, though your ale stores are precious. Ale is safer to drink than water from the communal well, which is often contaminated. Brother Thomas shakes his head. "I must return to the monastery for terse prayers. That would be the third canonical hour, around 9 a.m. But I've been instructed to tell you that the abbot is pleased with your pig enterprise. It seems your methods of breeding are producing heartier stock than some other tenants. This unexpected praise makes you stand a little straighter. The abbot's approval could mean first choice of land when new plots become available, or perhaps a reduction in rent. We're grateful for his grace's notice, you reply, trying not to sound too eager. Please convey our thanks. After Brother Thomas departs, the family exchanges excited glances. Recognition from the monastery is rare and valuable. "Does this mean we can keep the spotted piglet?" William asks hopefully. "Oh no," you sigh. "Rent is rent, but perhaps next quarter we might negotiate better terms." With breakfast finished and the unexpected visit concluded, it's time to begin the day's labour in earnest. You check the position of the sun. It's climbing toward mid-morning. "Let's get to that hog bog," you tell William, reaching for your tools, a hammer, some salvaged nails, and a saw that's seen better days. The Tudor day follows the rhythm of light and dark, the needs of animals and the ever-present bells of the monastery marking the canonical hours. There's no weekend to look forward to, though Sunday brings a pause for church and perhaps a village gathering afterward. Work is constant, interrupted only by illness, whether too severe to venture out, or holy days of which there are many in the Catholic calendar of 1536. As you and William head back out into the crisp January morning, you glance up at the monastery on the hill overlooking your small farm. Built of stone with glass windows and slate roofs, it stands in stark contrast to your humble dwelling. The monks live lives of relative comfort, with regular meals and warm private cells to sleep in. But as you look at your son healthy, despite the hardships, already skilled with animals and tools, and think of your wife and daughters in the cottage, you feel a peculiar sense of satisfaction. Your life is hard, yes, but it's yours in a way that few Tudor lives are. The pigs are your responsibility, your livelihood, and in some ways, your partners in survival. "Come on, lad," you say to William, clapping him on the shoulder. "Those pigs won't wait all day." And with that, you turn your attention to the damaged hog bog, already planning how to stretch your limited supply of timber and nails to make repairs that will last through the coming spring. This is the daily reality of the Tudor pig farmer: constant work, constant worry, but also a deep connection to the land, the animals, and the ancient rhythms of rural life that have sustained humanity for centuries. For now, though, there's Mabel's leg to check, a pen to fix, and a day's work ahead before you can return to your pile of straw in the corner of a smoky cottage. And somehow, despite everything, or perhaps because of it, you wouldn't trade places with anyone. Not even with someone who has a real bed. The broken board in the hog bog isn't just a problem, it's a potential disaster. You examine the damage more carefully now, kneeling in the muck to get a better view. The southern wall has rotted where rainwater collects against it. A jagged piece of wood juts out precisely at pig leg height, explaining poor Mabel's injury. "Hand me the hammer, Will," you say, pointing to where the nail needs to be removed. William passes you the tool, a crude iron hammerhead attached to a wooden handle with leather straps. Like most Tudor tools, it's handmade, expensive, and passed down through generations. Your father used this same hammer and his father before him. "Why don't we just build a new pen?" William asks, watching you struggle with the rusty nail. "This one's falling apart." You laugh, but there's no humour in it. "With what, lad? Magic timber that grows overnight?" The boy looks down, embarrassed. You immediately regret your sharpness. "Look," you say more gently, "a new hog bog would need at least 20 good boards. That's half a tree. We'd need the abbot's permission to fell a tree that size, plus we'd have to pay the woodcutter, the sawyer." You trail off, seeing he understands. "We make do with what we have," William finishes for you. It's practically the family motto. Tudor England runs on wood. It's the primary building material, the main fuel source, and the basis for countless tools and implements. But it's also strictly controlled. The great forests that once covered the country are dwindling, with the best timber reserved for shipbuilding and construction for the wealthy. For a tenant farmer to build even a simple hog bog requires either substantial payment or permission from the landowner. "Here," you say, handing William a small knife. "Whittle down these edges while I pull the nails. Sharp wood is what got Mabel in this state." As the boy sets to work smoothing the splintered edges, you extract the rusted nails carefully. Each one is precious iron, is expensive, and you'll straighten and reuse every nail you remove. The January sun climbs higher, providing little warmth but better light for your work. The monastery bells ring out for sext, marking midday. You've been working on the hogbog for hours and your back protests every movement, but the repairs are coming along. "Thomas!" Eleanor's voice calls from the direction of the cottage. "Visitors!" You straighten up, wincing, and peer over the hogbog wall. Coming up the muddy track toward your farm are two figures, a man and a woman, leading a small spotted pig on a rope. "Saints preserve us," you mutter. It's Henry and Joan Cook. The Cooks are your nearest neighbours, fellow pig farmers who rent from the monastery. Henry is a square-built man with a perpetual scowl, and Joan is thin and sharp-featured, known for her cutting gossip. They're not exactly friends, but in a small farming community, everyone depends on everyone else to some degree. "Master Fletcher," Henry calls, raising a hand in greeting. "God give you good day." "And to you?" you reply, climbing out of the hogbog. You're covered in mud and pig muck, hardly presentable for visitors, but they won't expect otherwise. "What brings you this way?" Henry gestures to the pig. "Brought this young boar for your inspection. Joan's brother raised him over Windrush way. Thought he might make good breeding stock for both our farms." You approach the animal with interest. It's a young boar, about 8 months old, with unusual spotted markings and a sturdy frame. Good breeding stock is always valuable, and introducing new bloodlines prevents the problems that come from inbreeding. "He's a fine-looking animal," you admit, squatting to examine the boar more closely. "Strong haunches, good teeth." "His mother had litters of 12, Joan offers, clearly proud of the connection. "All healthy." "What's the arrangement you're thinking?" you ask cautiously. Nothing comes free in Tudor England, especially not a healthy young boar. Henry scratches his beard. "Thought we might share him. I keep him through spring and summer. You take him fall and winter. Split the stud fees, if others want to use him. It's a good offer. Your current boar, Brutus, is getting old and increasingly dangerous. A new breeding male with proven lineage could significantly improve your pig enterprise." "And the cost?" you ask, already mentally calculating what you can afford. 4 shillings, Henry says. 2 from you, 2 from me. You try not to wince visibly. 4 shillings is a substantial sum, about what you'd earn for 2 fat pigs at market, but split between 2 farms and considering the potential return. "I'll need to discuss it with Eleanor," you say, which is both true and a way to avoid committing immediately, "but I'm interested." Henry nods, understanding the caution. "No rush. We thought you might want to see him before the Candlemas Fair. Joan's brother is bringing more stock then." The mention of Candlemas February 2nd, just weeks away, reminds you of the turning wheel of the year. Candlemas marks the midpoint between winter solstice and spring equinox. It's when the breeding season for pigs traditionally begins, in preparation for fall births. "Will you take some ale before you go?" you offer, following the custom of hospitality. "Gladly," Henry accepts. It's thirsty work walking in this cold. The 4 of you, William, Henry, and Joan, head toward the cottage, leaving the young boar tied to a post near the hogbog. You notice William eyeing the animal with interest. "He's a beauty, isn't he?" the boy whispers. "That he is," you agree, "and half the price of what we'd pay at the Candlemas Fair." Inside the cottage, Eleanor has been busy. The morning's baking is done, with 2 small loaves of coarse brown bread cooling near the fire. The smell fills the single-room dwelling, making your stomach growl despite the modest breakfast. "Master and Mistress Cook," Eleanor greets them, wiping her hands on her apron. "Welcome to our home." The standard greeting masks the quick assessment she's making. Eleanor knows as well as you do that unexpected visitors usually want something, whether it's to borrow a tool, offer a trade, or simply gather information to be shared later with others. "They've brought a young boar for us to consider," you explain. "For breeding." Eleanor's eyebrows lift slightly, the only indication of her surprise. She knows as well as you do that you don't have 2 shillings to spare, especially with the quarter rent due. A fine opportunity, she says diplomatically, reaching for a jug of ale and wooden cups. Agnes, fetch the bread. Your eldest daughter, who has returned from taking the sheep to pasture, cuts thick slices of the fresh bread. It's a sign of hospitality to offer food and drink to visitors, but also a subtle statement of prosperity. See, the gesture says, we have enough to share. The cooks settle on stools near the fire, accepting the ale and bread with thanks. Tudor social visits have their own rhythm, first pleasantries and refreshments, then gradually working around to the real purpose. The monastery's new bell sounds fine, Henry comments after his first sip of ale. Heard it ring for terce all the way from our place. Brother Thomas says it was cast in Bristol, you reply. Cost a small fortune, apparently. This kind of small talk continues. For a few minutes, comments on the weather, the condition of the roads, news from the village. But eventually, as you knew it would, the conversation turns to pigs. Saw Steward Blackwell yesterday, Henry mentions casually, says the monastery's planning to expand their pig herd come spring. This is interesting news. The monastery's agricultural decisions affect all the tenant farmers in the area. Did he say why? You ask, equally casual, though your mind is racing with implications. Henry leans forward slightly. Word is, the King's commissioners have been asking questions about the monastery's assets. Abbot Montague wants to show how profitable the estates are. A chill that has nothing to do with the January weather runs down your spine. Everyone has heard rumours about King Henry VIII's interest in monastery wealth. Since breaking with Rome and declaring himself head of the church in England, the king has been eyeing monastic properties with undisguised greed. Surely Winchcombe is safe, Eleanor interjects, her voice carefully neutral. The abbot is well connected at court. Joan Cook sniffs dismissively. Connections didn't save the smaller houses. Did you hear about Norton Priory? Dissolved last month, all the monks sent away, lands seized by the crown. The dissolution of the monasteries is a frightening prospect for tenant farmers like you. If Winchcombe Abbey were to be dissolved, its lands, including your farm, would be sold to whoever could pay the king's price. New landlords often meant new rents, new rules, and sometimes eviction for current tenants. It won't come to that, you say firmly, as much to reassure yourself as the others. Winchcombe is an ancient foundation, wealthy and respected. The conversation shifts to safer topics: the upcoming Candlemas Fair, the price of wool, a scandal involving the miller's daughter, but the shadow of uncertainty remains. After the cooks depart, taking their young boar with a promise to return for your answer before the fair, Eleanor turns to you with worried eyes. Can we afford it, Thomas? 2 shillings for half a boar? You sigh, running a hand through your thinning hair. Not easily, but if the monastery truly is trying to show profit, they'll favour tenants with strong pig enterprises. And if the monastery is dissolved, she asks, voicing the fear you both share, then we pray the new landlord values good pig farmers, you reply grimly. These are uncertain times in England. The religious reforms have brought changes that ripple through every level of society. Old certainties, the authority of the Pope, the permanence of the monasteries, the fixed order of things are crumbling like the rotted wood of your hogbog. Back to work, you tell William, who has been listening wide-eyed to the adult conversation. That pen won't fix itself. Outside, the January day has reached its brief peak of brightness. You squint up at the sun, calculating the hours of daylight remaining. Winter days are short, and there's still much to do before darkness falls. As you and William return to the hogbog repairs, you notice Mabel limping around the pen, the linen bandage long since trampled into the muck, but she's moving, eating, showing no signs of fever. The wound appears to be healing. "She'll be all right," William says confidently, following your gaze. "Seems so," you agree, relieved. A healthy sow is essential to your livelihood. The repair work continues through the afternoon. You replace the worst of the rotted boards with pieces salvaged from an old cart that broke beyond repair last harvest. It's not perfect, but it will hold. William proves surprisingly skilled with hammer and nail, his small hands more nimble than your work-roughened ones. You feel a surge of pride watching him work, followed by a pang of regret. At his age, you were still playing with wooden swords and chasing butterflies. The dissolution of the monasteries isn't the only change in Tudor England. Childhood itself seems to be shrinking, compressed by economic necessity. "Father," William says suddenly, breaking into your thoughts, "if we get the new boar, can I be in charge of him?" The question takes you by surprise. "In charge?" "Of feeding him and training him to come when called," the boy explains eagerly. "John Parker says his father's boar comes to a whistle." John Parker is the son of a relatively wealthy farmer who owns his land outright rather than renting. The comparison makes you uncomfortable, but you hide it with a smile. "We'll see," you tell him, the universal parent's answer across time. "First, we need to decide if we can afford him." As you work, you keep one eye on the sky. The clear January day is giving way to clouds rolling in from the west, possibly snow. Tudor weather forecasting relies on observation, folk wisdom, and painful experience. You've learned to read the clouds, the behavior of animals, the feel of the air on your skin. "Storm coming," you mutter, more to yourself than William. "Finish up that corner and we'll head in." The boy nods, hammering the last nail with careful concentration. He's learning the pig farmer's perpetual vigilance, watching the weather, the animals, the subtle signs that spell the difference between prosperity and disaster. With the hog-bog repairs complete, or at least complete enough to prevent further injuries, you survey your small pig empire with critical eyes. The sows are healthy, the piglets growing well. Even old Brutus, isolated in his own small pen, seems content, snuffling through a pile of rotting vegetables. Tudor pig farming is a surprisingly sophisticated enterprise. You know when to breed, when to separate the piglets for weaning, how to prevent disease, and how to maximize the animal's natural behaviors. In autumn, you'll drive the pigs into the forest for pannage, allowing them to forage for acorns and beech nuts, which produces the sweetest pork. All of this knowledge has been passed down through generations, refined by experience. "Check the water trough," you instruct William. "Make sure it's not frozen. Water is essential for pigs, and in January, keeping it from freezing is a constant battle. You've developed a system of rotating troughs, bringing one inside to thaw by the fire while another is in use. As William attends to the water, you collect the tools, carefully counting the precious nails and storing them in a leather pouch. Nothing goes to waste in a Tudor farm, not food scraps, not animal parts, not even bent nails, which can be straightened and reused. The monastery bells ring out for none, marking mid-afternoon. The sound carries clearly across the winter landscape, a reminder of the presence that dominates your life both spiritually and economically. You glance up at the imposing stone buildings on the hill. What would happen to your farm, your family, your pigs if King Henry's commissioners decided Winchcombe Abbey should be dissolved? The thought sends another chill through you, colder than the January air. "William!" you call, making a sudden decision. "We're going to the village." The boy looks up, surprised. "Now? But the storm." "Before the storm," you correct him. "We need to hear what people are saying about the king's commissioners. Information is a precious commodity in Tudor England, especially for those who can't read. News travels by word of mouth, often distorted in the telling. The village alehouse is the closest thing to a news source available to ordinary people like you." "Can I come too?" William asks eagerly. You consider. The village alehouse isn't really a place for children, but neither is it the raucous tavern of later centuries. It's simply the house of a woman licensed to brew and sell ale, where locals gather to drink and talk. Yes, you decide, but stay close and mind your manners. You inform Eleanor of your plan, and she nods, understanding the importance of gathering information. Agnes will stay to help with the evening meal preparation, and little Mary is already napping on her straw pallet, worn out from a morning of helping her mother. "Be back before dark," Eleanor warns. "The storm looks bad." You promise, though you both know dark falls early in January, and time is an imprecise concept in a world without clocks. The walk to the village takes about 20 minutes along a muddy track that serves as the main road. William trots beside you, excited by the unexpected excursion. The village itself is a modest cluster of cottages similar to your own, with the parish church at its centre. Unlike your isolated farm, these dwellings are packed closely together, with small garden plots behind them. The alehouse is simply the home of Widow Simmons, marked only by a painted wooden ale stake outside the door. Inside, the single room is similar to your cottage, but larger, with several trestle tables and benches. A fire roars in the central hearth, and the air is thick with the yeasty smell of ale and the smoke from the fire. Several men are already gathered, drinking from wooden cups and talking in low voices. They look up as you enter, nodding in greeting. You recognize most of them other tenant farmers, the village blacksmith, a couple of labourers who work on the larger farms. Fletcher, the blacksmith, a burly man named Tanner, acknowledges you. Don't often see you this time of day. The hogbog needed fixing, you explain, settling on a bench near the fire. Thought we deserved some ale after. It's a plausible excuse, and no one questions it. William sits beside you, eyes wide as he takes in the rare sight of men relaxing, talking freely. Widow Simmons brings you ale without being asked a thin, sour brew, but safer than water and warming on a cold day. William gets a smaller cup, diluted with water. You listen more than talk, gathering scraps of information. The conversation flows around topics of common interest, the weather, crops, livestock prices, but eventually turns to the subject you came to hear about. "My cousin works at Hales Abbey," one of the labourers is saying. "Says the king's men were there last week, making inventory of everything, counting candlesticks, weighing silver." Hales Abbey is less than 10 miles from Winchcombe, famous for its relic of the Holy Blood. If the King's Commissioners are investigating there, Winchcombe can't be far behind. What happens to the tenants if an abbey is dissolved? Someone asks, voicing the question burning in your mind. The blacksmith shrugs his massive shoulders. Depends who buys the land. Some new lords keep the old tenants, just raise the rents. Others clear the land for sheep. Clearing land for sheep is a frightening prospect. It's happening across England, landowners evicting tenant farmers to raise sheep, which require fewer workers and produce valuable wool. Entire villages have been emptied, the people forced to become wandering beggars, or to seek work in the growing towns. Won't happen here, another man insists. Abbot Montague has the king's favour. You're not so sure, but you keep your doubts to yourself. Tudor England is increasingly dangerous for those who speak their minds too freely, especially on matters touching the king's policies. The conversation shifts again, turning to more immediate concerns: a wolf reportedly seen near the sheep pastures, the upcoming Candlemas Fair, a dispute over boundary markers between two farms. You finish your ale, drop a halfpenny on the table for Widow Simmons, and nudge William. Time to go. Your mother will worry. Outside, the threatening clouds have darkened further, and the wind has picked up, carrying the smell of snow. You pull your woolen cap lower over your ears and hurry William along the muddy track toward home. "What will happen to us if the monastery is dissolved?" the boy asks suddenly, showing an understanding that surprises you. You consider how to answer. Tudor parents don't generally shield their children from harsh realities. Life is too precarious for that, but neither do you want to frighten him unnecessarily. "We'll survive," you say finally. "People always need pigs, and we're good pig farmers." It's the most honest answer you can give. The future is uncertain, but your skill with pigs, your knowledge passed down through generations, is something no King's Commissioner can inventory or seize. As you crest the small rise that marks the boundary of your farm, you see the hog bog in the distance, the newly repaired wall standing firm. Beyond it, smoke rises from the cottage chimney, promising warmth and Eleanor's cooking. Whatever changes come to Tudor England, whatever shifts in religion or politics or land ownership, this moment returning home at dusk to your family and your pigs is a constant. It's not an easy life, but it's one you understand, one you've mastered through years of hard-won experience. "Race you home," William challenges suddenly, taking off down the muddy track with the boundless energy of childhood. You laugh and follow at a more dignified pace, your mind still turning over the information gathered at the alehouse, but your heart lightening at the sight of home. The first snowflakes begin to fall as you reach the cottage door. The snow falls harder as you step inside the cottage, a blast of warm air greeting you like an old friend. Eleanor looks up from the hearth, where she's stirring a pot of something that smells better than anything has a right to in January. "Cut it close," she remarks, eyeing the snow clinging to your cap and shoulders. "Another hour and you'd have been lost in it." "We went to the alehouse," William announces proudly before you can answer, shaking snow from his hair like a wet dog. "Father had ale and I had some too." Eleanor raises an eyebrow at you, but there's no real censure in her look. In Tudor England, even children drink weak ale. It's safer than water. "And what news from the village?" she asks, returning to her stirring. You hang your cap on a peg by the door, moving closer to the fire's warmth. "The King's Commissioners were at Hales Abbey last week, making inventory." Eleanor's hand pauses briefly over the pot. She understands the implications as well as you do. "They'll come here next, I expect," she says quietly, mindful of the children. Little Mary is playing in the corner with a rag doll, but Agnes, at 12, is old enough to understand adult concerns. She watches you both with solemn eyes from where she's setting out wooden bowls for the evening meal. "Maybe," you concede, "Tanner thinks the Abbott's Court connections might protect Winchcombe." The fire crackles, sending up a shower of sparks. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the oiled parchment that covers your single window. "What's for supper?" you ask, changing the subject to something more immediate. "Smells good." "Pottage," Eleanor answers, "with the last of the salt pork and some dried herbs." Pottage is the staple food of Tudor England, a thick soup or stew made from whatever's available. In summer and autumn, it might be filled with fresh vegetables from the garden. In January, it's mostly root vegetables that store well. Turnips, carrots, parsnips, enhanced with whatever meat or fat can be spared. The salt pork is from a pig slaughtered at Martinmas, November 11th, the traditional time for butchering. The meat has been preserved in salt, hanging from the cottage rafters through the winter. It's a luxury to use some in January, when fresh meat is scarce. "William, fetch more wood for the fire," Eleanor instructs. "Agnes, finish setting the table." Tudor meal preparation is a family affair, with each member assigned tasks according to age and ability. Even 4-year-old Mary helps by carrying spoons, though you notice she's currently using one to give her doll an imaginary taste of pottage. As William goes out to the small woodpile by the door, you lower your voice. Henry Cook came by with a young boar, offering to share ownership for 2 shillings. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. 2 shillings? With the quarter rent due? I know, you sigh, but our Brutus is getting old and mean, won't be good for breeding much longer. She considers this, adding a pinch of precious dried herbs to the pottage. Herbs are not just for flavour in Tudor cooking, they're believed to balance the humours of the body, according to the medical theories of the time. If we sell the spotted male piglet to the monastery instead of giving it as rent, she begins. They might accept it, you finish her thought, but they'd want more coin to make up the difference. This kind of calculation is constant in Tudor economics, weighing options, calculating relative values, looking for small advantages within the rigid social and economic structures. William returns with an armful of wood, his face red with cold. It's really coming down now, he reports excitedly. Can't even see the hogbog from the door. A heavy snowfall brings mixed feelings. It means no work can be done outside, a welcome respite for aching muscles, but it also means the animals must be well sheltered, water sources might freeze, and precious firewood is consumed faster. We'd best check the pigs again after supper, you decide. Make sure they're settled for the night. Eleanor nods, lifting the iron pot from its hook over the fire. Supper's ready. The family gathers around the small table, really just a board laid across 2 barrels. Grace is said, thanking God for the food, even in these lean winter months. Religious observance is woven into every aspect of Tudor life, with prayers marking meals, beginnings and endings of work, and significant moments throughout the day. The pottage is served into wooden bowls, steam rising invitingly in the firelit cottage. Each family member has their own spoon. Yours is wooden, worn smooth from years of use. Eleanor's is pewter, a wedding gift from her father, who was slightly higher on the social ladder than your family. The children use wooden spoons like yours. Careful, it's hot, Eleanor warns Mary, helping the little girl with her bowl. The first spoonful is heaven, rich with turnips and carrots from your garden, thickened with a handful of oats and flavoured with small pieces of salt pork that make the humble vegetables taste like a feast. Good, you murmur appreciatively, and Eleanor's face softens with pride. In the constant struggle of Tudor life, a well-prepared meal is no small achievement. The family eats in relative silence, focused on the food. Mealtime conversation is less common than in modern times. Eating is serious business when food is this precious. The cook's new boar has spots like a cow, William says after a while, breaking the silence. And he's bigger than our piglets, even though he's not full grown. Did Joan Cook say anything else about the monastery? Eleanor asks, skillfully redirecting the conversation to the information she knows you must have gathered. You shrug, mopping up the last of your pottage with a piece of brown bread. Nothing we hadn't heard already. Norton Priory dissolved, monks sent away, the usual rumours. Agnes looks up from her bowl. Martha Tanner says they're going to close all the monasteries and make everyone be Protestant. You frown slightly. Children repeating adult talk can be dangerous in these religiously volatile times. Martha Tanner should mind her tongue, and so should you. What the king does with the monasteries is his affair, not ours. But if Winchcombe Abbey closes, what happens to us? Agnes persists, showing the same perceptiveness William had earlier. Do we lose our farm? Eleanor reaches over to smooth Agnes's hair. That's not going to happen. And even if it did, we'd find a way. We always do. It's the same reassurance you gave William, and like him, Agnes seems satisfied for now. Children in Tudor times learn early to live with uncertainty. After the meal, bowls are wiped clean with the last of the bread. No food is wasted and stacked on the small shelf that serves as a cupboard. There's no sink, no running water. Dishes are properly washed only occasionally, with sand or ash as scrubbing agents. "I'll check the pigs," you say, reaching for your cap again. "William, come with me. We'll need the lantern." The lantern is a simple affair, a candle set inside a perforated metal container with a handle. Candles made from tallow, animal fat, are expensive. You use them sparingly, mostly relying on the fire's light inside the cottage. But for night chores, the lantern is essential. Eleanor helps you light it using a splinter of wood ignited from the fire. The flame catches, casting a warm glow through the lantern's tiny holes. "Don't be long," she warns. "The snow's getting worse." You and William wrap yourselves as best you can against the cold, woolen caps pulled low, an extra layer of clothing, leather boots tightly laced. Even so, the blast of freezing air as you open the door makes you both gasp. The snow is falling in thick, swirling sheets, already ankle-deep and building quickly. The familiar landscape of your small farm is transformed, softened and muffled under the white blanket. "Stay close," you tell William, holding the lantern high. Its light makes a small golden sphere in the darkness, snow dancing through the beam like spirits. The hogbog is only about 50 paces from the cottage, but tonight it feels like a journey to the next county. The wind cuts through your clothing, and the snow makes the footing treacherous. "I can't see anything," William shouts over the wind, his hand clutching your jerkin. "Just a bit further," you encourage him, though you're having trouble seeing the path yourself. The familiar walk to the hogbog, which you could do blindfolded in normal conditions, has become a challenge. Finally, the dark bulk of the pig enclosure emerges from the swirling snow. You feel a rush of relief, followed immediately by concern. The pigs are hardy animals, but a blizzard like this is dangerous even for them. The covered portion of the hogbog provides some shelter, but you need to make sure all the animals are inside, not caught in the open part of the pen. "Hold the lantern," you instruct William, passing him the light as you climb over the wall into the pen. The pigs are huddled together in the covered area, their body heat creating a relatively warm space. You count them by lantern light. 2 sows, 11 piglets, all present. The sows look up at you with what seems like reproach for disturbing them. "They're fine," you call to William, "all inside." You're about to climb back over the wall when a sound stops you, a faint, distressed squeal coming from the far corner of the pen, away from the sheltered area. "What was that?" William asks, lifting the lantern higher. You listen intently, and there it is again, the unmistakable sound of a pig in distress. Cursing under your breath, you wade through the snow-covered muck toward the sound. In the corner, half buried in rapidly accumulating snow, is one of the smaller piglets, separated from the litter. It's shivering violently, making pitiful noises that are mostly swallowed by the howling wind. "Fool animal," you mutter, scooping up the piglet. It's icy cold, its tiny body rigid with chill. Must have been sleeping apart when the storm hit. The piglet weighs only a few pounds, but carrying it through the snowdrifts back to the sheltered area is harder than you expected. Your boots slip in the hidden muck beneath the snow, and the wind seems determined to push you backward. Finally, you reach the covered portion of the hogbog. The other pigs shift reluctantly, making room as you place the shivering piglet among them. It immediately burrows toward the warmth of its mother. "Will it live?" William asks anxiously as you climb back over the wall, breathing hard from the exertion. You brush snow from your jerkin, considering. "If it warms up quickly enough, we'll check in the morning." The loss of a single piglet wouldn't be devastating to your enterprise, but every animal represents future food or income. Besides, there's a basic bond between a farmer and his livestock, not sentimental in the modern sense, but a recognition of mutual dependence. "We should check Brutus too," William reminds you, holding the lantern toward the smaller pen where the boar is kept separate. You nod, though you're cold and eager to return to the cottage. The boar's pen is another 20 paces through the worsening storm. Brutus, unlike the piglets, needs no help. The massive boar has created a nest of straw in his shelter and barely acknowledges your presence when you peer over the wall. His breath steams in the cold air, but he seems comfortable enough. "Right, that's all of them," you say, taking the lantern back from William. "Now let's get inside before we freeze like that piglet nearly did." The return journey to the cottage seems even longer, the wind now driving the snow directly into your faces. You keep a firm grip on William's shoulder, terrified of losing him in the white darkness. Even with the lantern, visibility is down to a few feet. When the golden glow of the cottage window finally appears through the snow, you feel a surge of relief so powerful it's almost dizzying. Like a sailor sighting land after weeks at sea, that small light represents safety, warmth, family, all that stands between you and the killing cold. Eleanor opens the door as you approach, her anxious face illuminated by the fire behind her. "Thank God," she murmurs as you stumble in, bringing a swirl of snow with you. "I was about to send Agnes with a rope tied to the door." Such precautions aren't unusual in Tudor winters. People have been known to get lost and freeze to death mere yards from their own doors during severe blizzards. "The pigs are fine," you report, stamping snow from your boots. "Found one piglet half frozen, but got it back with the others." William strips off his snow-covered cap and outer garments, moving directly to the fire. His face is red with cold, his hair plastered to his head with melted snow. "It was an adventure," he declares, though his shivering belies the brave words. "We could hardly see the hog bog, even with the lantern." Eleanor wraps a woolen blanket around his shoulders, shooting you a look that says, "Next time, go alone." But she knows as well as you do that in Tudor farming, children learn by doing, even in dangerous conditions. It's how you learned, and your father before you. "Into dry clothes, both of you," she instructs. "I've kept the pottage warm." Changing clothes in a Tudor cottage is a simple affair. There are no separate rooms for privacy. The family simply turns their backs while each member changes, a courtesy rather than true privacy. Your dry clothes are simply another set of similar garments. Woolen hose, linen shirt, woolen jerkin. The materials are the same, only drier. Once changed, you settle by the fire with a fresh bowl of warmed pottage. The storm rages outside, wind howling around the cottage and snow occasionally sifting down through the thatched roof. But inside, the fire crackles cheerfully and the family is together and safe. If the snow keeps up, we won't be able to open the door by morning, you observe, listening to the wind. Eleanor nods, already thinking ahead to the challenges a heavy snowfall brings. "We have enough food for a few days, and the pigs? They have shelter, and they were fed today," you assure her. "They'll be hungry by tomorrow, but they won't starve if we can't reach them for a day." Tudor farmers are accustomed to planning for weather emergencies. Every winter brings storms that might trap a family indoors for days at a time. Food is stored, firewood is stacked by the door, and everyone knows how to endure the enforced idleness of a snow day. "If we're snowed in tomorrow, we can work on the spinning," Eleanor says, glancing at her distaff and spindle in the corner. Spinning wool into thread is a constant task for Tudor women, providing both clothing for the family and a product to sell or barter. "And I can finish carving the new spoon," you add. Small woodworking projects are saved for just such occasions, items needed by the household that can be made indoors during bad weather. The children listen to this planning with mixed feelings. A snow day means no outdoor chores, but it also means indoor tasks and the boredom of confinement. "Can you tell us a story if we're snowed in?" Mary asks hopefully, climbing onto your lap now that you've finished eating. "Perhaps," you agree, settling her more comfortably. "The one about how grandfather outsmarted the wolf?" Mary nods eagerly. Tudor children's entertainment comes primarily from storytelling, family histories, folk tales, and religious stories passed down orally. There are no books in your cottage, and even if there were, only Agnes has learned some basic reading at the parish church school. The evening settles into its familiar rhythm. Eleanor spins by firelight, her skilled hands drawing out wool fibres and twisting them into thread. Agnes works on a simple embroidery project, decorative stitches on a piece of linen that will eventually become a collar. William whittles a small piece of wood, trying to shape it into an animal, and Mary dozes on your lap. Outside, the storm continues unabated. Inside, the fire slowly dies down to glowing embers. It's time for bed. "Right," you say, gently shifting Mary to wake her. "Let's bank the fire and get some sleep." Banking the fire is an essential nightly ritual. A Tudor household can't afford to let the fire go out completely. Fire starting is difficult and time-consuming. Instead, the embers are covered with ashes to keep them smouldering through the night, ready to be uncovered and built up again in the morning. Eleanor spreads the ashes carefully while you check that the door is securely barred. The single window is already shuttered against the night and the storm. The sleeping arrangements are simple. You and Eleanor share a straw mattress in one corner, covered with woolen blankets. The children have their own piles of straw nearby, similarly covered. In wealthier households, there might be proper bedsteads, but for a tenant farmer, this arrangement is standard. "Will the monastery still expect the rent tomorrow with the snow?" Agnes asks as she settles into her makeshift bed. "The steward won't travel in this any more than we would," you assure her. "They'll wait for the roads to clear." This small reprieve is one of the few benefits of the storm. The quarter rent is a constant pressure, and even a few days' delay can be helpful. The family performs one final ritual before sleep. Prayers. Tudor religious observance is woven throughout the day, but evening prayers are particularly important. You lead, reciting the Pater Noster, Our Father, and Ave Maria in Latin as you were taught, though the religious landscape of England is shifting toward English prayers under King Henry's reforms. Prayer complete, the family settles for the night. The cottage is dark except for the faint red glow of the banked fire. Outside, the storm howls, but inside, wrapped in woolen blankets on beds of straw, the Fletcher family prepares for sleep. "Thomas," Eleanor whispers once the children's breathing has steadied into sleep, "do you really think the monastery might be dissolved?" In the darkness, you can't see her face, but you can hear the worry in her voice. It's rare for Eleanor to express fear. She's the steady centre of the family, practical and resilient. "I don't know," you admit quietly. "The king needs money for his wars, and the monasteries are rich. But Winchcombe has powerful friends." "If it happens," she begins. "If it happens, we'll face it," you interrupt gently. "We're good farmers. Pigs need tending whether the land belongs to a monastery or a new lord. It's the same reassurance you've given the children, and like them, Eleanor seems to accept it, at least for now." She shifts closer to you on the shared mattress, her warmth a comfort against the winter night. Sleep comes quickly after a day of physical labor. Your last conscious thought is a hope that the lost piglet survives the night, huddled with its siblings in the straw of the hog bog. In the precarious balance of Tudor farming, every animal matters, every crop counts, every day brings new challenges to overcome. As you drift into sleep, the sound of the storm gradually fades from your awareness. Tomorrow will bring its own concerns. Snow to shovel, animals to feed, repairs to make. But for now, surrounded by your sleeping family in your humble cottage, you are as secure as any Tudor farmer can hope to be. The last thing you notice before sleep claims you is that the howling of the wind has taken on an almost musical quality, rising and falling like the plainchant you hear at Sunday Mass. It's oddly soothing, this wild lullaby of the winter storm singing the Tudor pig farmer to his well-earned rest. Outside, the snow continues to fall, transforming the landscape into a white wilderness. The hog bog, the cottage, the monastery on the hill, all are slowly disappearing under the relentless accumulation, becoming mere shapes in a world turned suddenly, blindingly white. Morning comes with an eerie silence. No bird calls, no distant monastery bells, no squealing pigs demanding breakfast. Just the muffled stillness that follows a heavy snowfall. You wake slowly, your body stiff from sleeping on straw that's gradually compacted through the night. Beside you, Eleanor is already stirring, her internal clock as reliable as any monastery timekeeper. "It's stopped," she whispers, meaning the storm. You listen, and she's right. The howling wind that sang you to sleep has died completely, leaving behind that distinctive winter hush. The cottage is frigid, the banked fire has burned down to the faintest glow, and your breath forms clouds in the cold air. This is the reality of Tudor winter mornings, the shock of cold as you leave the relative warmth of shared blankets. "I'll get the fire up," you murmur, reluctant but resolute. It's the man's job to revive the morning fire in most Tudor households, while the woman begins preparations for the day's first meal. Sliding out from under the woolen blankets, you shiver as the cold air hits you. You sleep in your linen shirt and woolen hose. Removing more clothing for bed is an invitation to freeze in winter. Only in summer do Tudor people sometimes sleep in special nightshirts, or occasionally nothing at all. The cottage floor is ice cold against your bare feet as you make your way to the hearth. Kneeling before the banked fire, you carefully brush away the protective layer of ashes to reveal the glowing embers beneath. They've survived the night, a small victory. You add kindling, small twigs and wood shavings saved for this purpose, and blow gently. The embers brighten, then catch the kindling with tiny, promising flames. Gradually you add larger pieces of wood until the fire is properly alight, pushing back the morning chill. "Father!" William's voice comes from his straw bed, thick with sleep. "Is it very deep?" "The snow?" you clarify, though you know that's what he means. "We'll find out soon enough." Eleanor is up now too, pulling her kirtle over her linen shift. Like you, she slept partially dressed against the cold. She moves to help Agnes and Mary rise and dress while you focus on the fire. "First things first," you announce once the fire is blazing. "We need to dig out the door and check the animals." The cottage door opens inward, which proves fortunate. When you lift the wooden bar and push, it moves only a few inches before hitting a solid wall of snow. "Saints preserve us," you mutter, peering through the narrow opening. The snow has drifted against the cottage, nearly reaching the top of the door. "We'll have to dig our way out," you tell the family, who have gathered behind you to see. "William, fetch the wooden shovel." The shovel is a simple tool carved from a single piece of wood used primarily for moving grain, but it will serve for snow as well. Tudor tools are often multi-purpose by necessity. Metal is expensive, and specialized equipment is a luxury few farmers can afford. I'll make breakfast while you dig, Eleanor decides, turning to the food stores kept in a wooden chest. You'll need something hot before tackling the hog bog. While you and William take turns scraping snow away from the door, creating a narrow passage outward, Eleanor prepares a simple breakfast of oat porridge. Agnes helps, measuring the precious oats with careful attention. Even a spoonful wasted could be missed by winter's end. The digging is hard work. The snow is deep and has partially frozen during the night, forming a crust that must be broken before it can be moved. Your breath comes in great white clouds as you labour, and sweat forms under your woolen cap despite the cold. "It's like digging through stone," William complains after his turn, his small face red with exertion. "Keep at it," you encourage him. "Think of the hungry pigs." After nearly an hour of effort, you've created a passage from the door, a narrow canyon through snow that's waist-high on you and chest-high on William. The world outside is transformed, familiar landmarks hidden under smooth white drifts. The morning sun glints off the snow with painful brightness. "Look at the hog bog," William gasps, pointing. The pig enclosure is barely visible, just the top of its fence and roof showing above the snow. The path you cleared last night is completely gone, filled in by the continuing storm after you return to the cottage. "At least the covered part should have kept them dry," you say, trying to sound more confident than you feel. A night in wet conditions could mean sick pigs, or worse. "Breakfast first," Eleanor calls from the doorway. "You'll need your strength." The porridge is simple but filling, enhanced with a drizzle of precious honey from your 2 beehives. Beekeeping is another of your small enterprises, not as central as pig farming, but important for both honey and wax. Tudor sweeteners are limited, with honey being the most accessible for common people. Sugar exists, but is a luxury for the wealthy. "We'll need to clear a path to the hog bog," you tell William as you eat. "Then check on Brutus. After that, we can tackle the path to the village. We'll need supplies if this snow stays." Eleanor nods her agreement with this plan. "Agnes and I will try to clear around the cottage. Mary can help gather more firewood from the pile." This division of labour is typical. Tudor farm families function as economic units, with each member contributing according to their abilities. Even 4-year-old Mary has her tasks, simple though they may be. After breakfast, you and William bundle up as best you can for the cold work ahead. Extra woolen socks inside your leather boots, woolen caps pulled low, and old cloaks wrapped tightly around your shoulders. Tudor winter clothing isn't specially designed for snow. You simply layer whatever you have, prioritizing wool for its ability to retain warmth even when wet. "Remember, the pigs come first," you remind William as you head out. "They haven't eaten since yesterday." The digging to the hog bog is even harder than clearing the doorway. The snow is deeper in the open farmyard, with drifts taller than you in some places. You and William take turns breaking through the crust with a wooden staff, then shoveling a narrow path forward. The sun climbs higher as you work, providing some warmth but also making the snow blindingly bright. Your eyes water from the glare, and you frequently pause to wipe them. "The monks say this is what heaven looks like," William comments during one such pause, gesturing at the pristine white landscape stretching to the horizon, all white and shining. "If heaven involves this much digging, I'm not sure I want to go," you reply dryly, making the boy laugh. It takes most of the morning to reach the hog bog. By the time you arrive, your arms and back are aching, and both of you are soaked with sweat despite the freezing temperature. The physical toll of Tudor life is constant, but snow adds an extra dimension of difficulty. The pigs greet your arrival with frantic squealing. They're hungry and frustrated by confinement, pressing against the fence of their enclosure as you approach. They sound healthy enough, you observe with relief. Vocal pigs are generally healthy pigs. The covered portion of the hog bog has indeed kept them dry, and their body heat, generated by a dozen animals pressed together, has created a relatively warm space. But they've had no food or fresh water since yesterday afternoon, and their trough is empty. We need to bring food from the cottage, you tell William. I'll start clearing some of this snow from the pen while you fetch the scraps bucket. While William heads back along your newly dug path, you begin the work of clearing snow from inside the pig enclosure. The animals crowd around, hampering your efforts, curious about anything new in their environment. "Back, you greedy beasts," you mutter, though without real annoyance. Their energy is a good sign after the dangerously cold night. You check each pig as you work, paying special attention to the piglet that was separated during the storm. To your relief, it seems to have recovered, nursing energetically from its mother. Pigs are surprisingly hardy animals when given basic shelter. Mabel's leg wound is also healing well, the honey salve having done its work. Tudor veterinary medicine is largely based on the same herbal remedies used for humans, adjusted for the animal's size and temperament. Experience teaches which treatments work, and this knowledge is passed down through generations. William returns with the food scraps, vegetable peelings, stale bread crusts soaked in sour milk, and the bones from last night's salt pork, picked clean but still tasty to a pig. You spread these in the cleared area, stepping back as the animals rush to eat. "What about water?" William asks, watching the feeding frenzy. You look at the frozen water trough thoughtfully. "We'll have to break the ice and refill it. But first, let's check on Brutus." The separate enclosure for the boar presents its own challenges. Snow has drifted against one wall, allowing Brutus a potential escape route if he chooses to climb the drift. Fortunately, the cold seems to have dampened his usual aggressive tendencies, and he merely watches with suspicious eyes as you clear snow from his pen. "He looks thin," William observes. You nod, assessing the boar critically. "The cold burns more energy. We'll need to increase his feed if this weather continues." This is the constant calculation of Tudor farming, balancing the needs of the animals against your limited resources. Winter is always the most challenging time, when food stores dwindle but needs increase due to the cold. With the immediate crisis of the pigs addressed, you turn to the next task, clearing a path to the village. This is essential not just for supplies, but for community support. Tudor villages function through mutual aid, especially in emergencies like severe weather. "We should see if the cooks need help too," you tell William as you begin the long process of digging toward the village path. "Their farm is more exposed than ours." William nods, understanding the unspoken rule of rural Tudor life. You help your neighbours because someday you'll need their help in return. The sun is high overhead, marking midday, when you hear voices calling from the direction of the village. You pause in your digging, leaning on the wooden shovel as you peer through the bright glare. 3 figures are making their way along the partially cleared village path, breaking through drifts where necessary. As they get closer, you recognize Henry Cook, his teenage son John, and another neighbour, Robert Fisher. "Fletcher," Henry calls, raising a hand in greeting. "You've survived then." "So far," you call back, grinning despite your exhaustion. "We were just digging our way to check on you." The men reach you, their faces red from cold and exertion, breath steaming in the winter air. Like you, they're dressed in whatever warm layers they possess, with cloth wrapped around their faces against the cold. "The village is organising a snow brigade," Robert Fisher explains after greetings are exchanged, checking on outlying farms, helping clear paths, sharing resources. This type of spontaneous community organisation is typical in Tudor England, where survival often depends on mutual support. There's no official emergency service, no government aid, just neighbours helping neighbours through crisis. How bad is it? You ask, gesturing toward the village. Worst snow in 10 years by most reckonings, Henry answers. 2 cottages near the brook had their roofs cave in from the weight. No one hurt, thank God. You cross yourself automatically at the mention of Providence, a gesture repeated by the others. Tudor religious observance is reflexive, woven into everyday speech and reaction. And the monastery? You ask, your thoughts turning to the quarter rent and the unsettling rumours of dissolution. The brothers are out helping too, Robert says. Abbots opened the monastery storehouse for those in need, and the steward sent word, no rent collections until the roads clear properly. This news brings visible relief to your face. The monastery's charity during crisis reinforces your hope that it might be spared the king's dissolution campaign. A benevolent landlord is worth preserving from a tenant's perspective. We're checking farms to the north, Henry explains. Fisher's Group is handling the east. Can you manage here, or do you need hands? You consider your situation. The pigs are fed, if not comfortable, and your family is safe and warm in the cottage. Others may be in more dire circumstances. We're managing, you assure them, but we'll join the effort once we've finished clearing our own paths. Eleanor's got a pot of pottage that could feed a few hungry diggers. The men nod appreciatively at the mention of hot food. Tudor hospitality centres on sharing whatever you have, especially in times of hardship. We'll spread the word, Fisher promises. God keep you, Fletcher, and you respond, the traditional parting. As the men continue on their way checking the next outlying farm, you turn to William with renewed energy. Let's finish this path and get back to the cottage. Your mother will want to know the news. The work continues through the afternoon, your progress slowed by increasing fatigue. Tudor physical endurance is remarkable by modern standards. A lifetime of manual labour builds strength and stamina, but even the hardiest farmer has limits. By the time you and William stagger back to the cottage, the sun is already low in the western sky. Winter days are short and darkness comes early. You've managed to clear paths to the hog bog, to Brutus's pen, and part way to the village, enough for emergency access if needed. Eleanor meets you at the door, her expression shifting from worry to relief. Thank God, she says, helping you remove your snow-crusted outer layers. I was about to send Agnes looking for you. We met the village snow brigade, you explain, moving gratefully toward the fire. Worst storm in 10 years, they're saying. The cottage is warm and filled with savoury smells. Eleanor has been busy during your absence, cooking and organising. Agnes has continued spinning wool, a substantial ball of thread now wound on her spindle. Even little Mary has been productive, helping to sort dried beans from last autumn's harvest, a task suited to small fingers. The monastery has opened its storehouse, you tell Eleanor as you warm your hands by the fire, and the steward's delayed rent collection until the road's clear. She nods, understanding the significance of both pieces of information. A small blessing from a great hardship, she comments, which sums up much of Tudor pragmatism toward misfortune. How are the pigs? She asks, ladling hot pottage into bowls for you and William. Hungry but healthy, you report between grateful spoonfuls. Even the little one that got separated in the storm. Tudor pigs are tough beasts. Like Tudor farmers, she says with a small smile. The afternoon fades toward evening, and your thoughts turn to the coming night. Another hard freeze is likely, with clear skies after the storm. The animals are fed for now, but tomorrow will bring the same challenges. Clearing more snow, ensuring water sources don't freeze, maintaining access to essential areas of the farm. We should join the village effort tomorrow, you tell Eleanor, as the family gathers by the fire. Fisher said they need all hands. She nods agreement. Tudor community obligation is taken seriously. You contribute when others are in need, knowing they would do the same for you. Agnes can come with us, you continue. She's old enough to help. William can stay and tend the pigs. At 12, Agnes is indeed considered old enough for community work. Childhood in Tudor England is brief, with adult responsibilities beginning early, especially for girls who will likely be married by 16 or 17. I can manage the pigs, William agrees, proud to be trusted with this responsibility. The evening settles into its usual routine, modified by the circumstances. There's no spinning tonight. Eleanor's hands are too chapped from cold and wet work. Instead, she mends a torn shirt while you work on a small carving project, a new handle for a kitchen knife that broke last week. The children are more subdued than usual, the physical demands of the day having drained their energy. Even Mary is content to sit quietly, playing with her rag doll rather than demanding stories or attention. As darkness falls completely, Eleanor prepares a simple supper, more pottage, reheated from midday with the last of yesterday's bread. Tudor meals are repetitive by modern standards, especially in winter when fresh ingredients are scarce. Will the snow melt soon? Agnes asks as the family eats. You consider the question, drawing on years of observation and weather lore. Not immediately, too cold for fast melting, but in a few days, if the sun stays strong, we'll see the high ground clear first. This kind of practical knowledge, how weather patterns work, how the land responds to conditions, is essential to Tudor farming success. There are no meteorological forecasts, just experience and observation passed through generations. The monastery road will clear first, you add. It's on high ground and they'll have many hands working on it. The monastery road is important for the entire community. It connects to the main highways that lead to market towns where goods can be traded. Even in normal times, the monastery maintains this road better than the smaller village paths. After supper, the family prepares for bed with the usual routine. The fire is banked for the night, prayers are said, and everyone settles onto their straw mattresses. The physical exertion of snow clearing ensures that sleep comes quickly to most. But you find yourself lying awake, staring at the dark ceiling, mind turning over problems and possibilities. The delayed rent is helpful but temporary. The rumours of monastery dissolution remain troubling. The condition of your pigs after this unexpected weather crisis will need careful monitoring. Eleanor stirs beside you, sensing your wakefulness. "What troubles you?" she whispers. "Nothing new," you assure her. "Just the usual worries, made louder by the quiet." She understands. Tudor life is precarious at the best of times. A snowstorm, a pig disease, a poor harvest, any of these could tip a family from subsistence to starvation. Add the uncertainty of changing religious and political landscapes, and sleep becomes elusive, despite physical exhaustion. "We've weathered worse," she reminds you, her hand finding yours in the darkness. And it's true. In your nearly 40 years, you've survived crop failures, livestock diseases, and political upheavals that threaten to upend rural life. The Tudor era is one of extraordinary change, but farming continues, adapting as it must to new realities. "Sleep," Eleanor murmurs. "Tomorrow needs your strength." You close your eyes, consciously relaxing each part of your body as your father taught you long ago. The technique usually works, and tonight is no exception. Gradually, the worries recede, replaced by the simple awareness of your breathing, the distant howl of a fox, the occasional pop from the banked fire. The last thought before sleep claims you is a simple observation. The pigs survived, the family is safe, and tomorrow you'll help neighbours who would help you in turn. In the complex, changing world of Tudor England, these simple constants provide a framework for living community, family, and the ancient rhythms of farming life. As you drift into sleep, snow continues to blanket your small corner of Tudor England, insulating it against the cold, muffling sounds, smoothing the rough edges of daily existence. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, but tonight, at least, there is peace in the pig farmer's cottage. In the hog bog, the pigs sleep too, huddled together for warmth, their breath forming small clouds in the frozen air. Even Brutus, solitary in his pen, has created a nest of straw where he lies curled against the cold. All wait for morning, for food, for the rhythm of Tudor farm life to continue despite snow, despite cold, despite the uncertain future facing monastery lands in a rapidly changing England. The Tudor pig farmer sleeps, gathering strength for whatever tomorrow may bring. The next few days pass in a blur of snow clearing, animal tending, and community work. Each morning begins the same. The shock of cold as you leave warm blankets, the careful nurturing of fire from overnight embers, the simple breakfast of porridge or bread, then out into the white world to check on the pigs before joining the village effort. By the third day after the storm, paths are cleared to all the outlying farms. 2 elderly villagers have been brought to the parish church, where a fire is kept burning day and night for those needing shelter. The monastery has indeed opened its storehouses, distributing grain and preserved food to families whose own stores were running low. It's on this third day, as you're helping to clear the main village road, that you first hear the bells, not the regular monastery bells marking the canonical hours. You're all accustomed to those, but an irregular, excited pealing that carries across the snow-covered landscape. "What's that?" Agnes asks, pausing in her work of carrying cleared snow in a basket. You straighten, your back protesting after hours of digging. Something's happening at the monastery. The other villagers have stopped working too, heads tilted toward the sound. Bell ringing outside the regular schedule usually signals either celebration or alarm. Riders coming, someone calls, pointing toward the monastery road. In the distance, you can make out a small group on horseback, moving steadily along the cleared road from the monastery toward the village. Their cloaks are bright splashes of colour against the white landscape. "The abbot's livery," Henry Cook observes, shading his eyes against the snow glare. "And is that Brother Thomas at the front?" As the riders draw closer, you can see that Henry is right. Brother Thomas, the young monk who delivered the message about the delayed rent, is leading a small procession of monastery servants. They're carrying large sacks across their saddles. The village work party moves to the side of the road, making way for the riders. There's a mix of curiosity and wariness in the gathered faces. Tudor common folk are accustomed to respecting authority, but unexpected visits from monastery officials can mean anything from additional charity to new demands. "Good people of Winchcombe," Brother Thomas calls as the riders reach the gathered villagers. "The Lord Abbot sends his greetings and his concern for your welfare after the great snow." There's a murmur of appreciation from the crowd. Such personal attention from the abbot is unusual and welcome. His Grace has ordered additional provisions to be distributed to all tenant families, Brother Thomas continues, gesturing to the sacks. Wheat flour, salt pork, and dried apples from the monastery stores. This announcement brings a more enthusiastic response. Even in the best of times, such foodstuffs are valuable. After a snow emergency, when travel to markets is impossible and supplies are dwindling, they're precious indeed. Additionally, Brother Thomas raises his voice over the excited talk. His Grace announces that in light of the hardship caused by the snow, the quarter rent will be reduced by 1/3 for all tenants. This news brings actual cheers. A rent reduction is rare and significant. It means more of your limited resources can go toward immediate needs rather than obligations to the monastery. The steward will begin collections next week, weather permitting, Brother Thomas concludes. God bless you all for your fortitude in this trial. As the monastery servants begin distributing the sacks, one per family represented in the work party, you find yourself next to Henry Cook in the line. "Generous," Henry comments quietly. "More than I expected." You nod, thinking, perhaps the rumours of dissolution have the abbot worried about his reputation. Henry gives you a sharp look. "Careful, Fletcher. Even true words can be dangerous these days." He's right, of course. Tudor England is increasingly a place where casual comments about religious or political matters can have serious consequences. The monasteries are under scrutiny, but criticising either them or the king's policies toward them is risky. When your turn comes, you accept the sack with appropriate gratitude, murmuring thanks to Brother Thomas. The young monk acknowledges you with a slight nod. He remembers his visit to your cottage before the storm. "How fares your pig enterprise, Master Fletcher?" he asks, surprising you with the personal inquiry. "Well enough, brother. Despite the snow," you reply. "God has been merciful. The abbot maintains his interest in your breeding methods," Brother Thomas says. "Perhaps when conditions improve, you might visit the monastery farm to advise our swineherd." This unexpected request sends a ripple of pride through you. To be consulted on pig farming by the monastery is a mark of respect that won't go unnoticed by your neighbours. "I would be honoured, brother," you respond, careful not to appear too eager. Humility is expected in interactions with monastery officials. With a final blessing, Brother Thomas and his party continue through the village, ensuring every family receives their share of the provisions. The mood among the work party is noticeably lighter as digging resumes. The monastery swine advisor, Henry, teases as you return to work side by side. Next, you'll be dining with the abbot himself. You smile but say nothing. Henry's jest holds a hint of envy, though not malicious. In the careful social hierarchy of Tudor village life, any mark of favour from those in authority can shift one's standing among peers. The work continues through the afternoon, but there's a new energy to it. The monastery's generosity and the prospect of reduced rent have lifted spirits. Even the weather seems to be cooperating, with the sun gaining strength and the first signs of melting on south-facing slopes. By the time you and Agnes head home, carrying your precious sack of provisions, the mood is almost festive. The worst of the crisis has passed and Tudor resilience is reasserting itself. Eleanor meets you at the cottage door, her expression shifting from concern to relief as she sees your burden. "What's this?" "The abbot's gift," you explain, setting the heavy sack on the table. "And better news, the quarter rent is reduced by 1/3. Her eyes widen. "Truly? That's unusual." Brother Thomas made the announcement himself, Agnes confirms, her cheeks red from cold and excitement. "And he asked father to advise the monastery swineherd." Eleanor's gaze shifts to you, questioning. You shrug, trying to appear nonchalant despite your pride. "Apparently the abbot is impressed with our pig breeding." "Well," Eleanor says after a moment, "we should thank God for such favour. It comes when much needed." While Agnes tells William and Mary about the day's events, Eleanor inspects the contents of the sack. The promised wheat flour, salt pork and dried apples are indeed inside. High-quality provisions that will significantly extend your winter stores. "This flour is finer than what we usually get," she observes, rubbing it between her fingers. "Almost white." White flour is typically reserved for wealthy households, with coarser, darker flour being the staple of common folk. This gift is not just generous, but of unusually high quality. What do you make of it? You ask quietly, while the children are distracted with their own conversation. Eleanor considers, her practical mind turning over possibilities. Either the abbot is truly concerned for his tenants, or he's worried about the king's commissioners. You finish her thought. She nods slowly. A beloved abbot with loyal tenants might be viewed more favourably. This kind of calculation is typical of Tudor thinking, where motives are rarely assumed to be purely charitable. The complex relationship between monasteries and their tenants has always involved a mixture of genuine Christian concern and practical economic management. Either way, you say pragmatically, we have flour and reduced rent. God works in mysterious ways. Eleanor smiles at this mild blasphemy. Indeed. Now, let's see what we can make with this fine flour. The children deserve a treat after all their hard work. The evening meal that night is unusually festive for a Tudor winter. Eleanor makes a simple fruit tart with some of the dried apples and precious flour, sweetened with a bit of honey. It's not the elaborate confection that might appear on a noble's table, but for your family, it's a rare luxury. Will we really go to the monastery, Father? William asks as you all savour the sweet treat. When the weather clears further, you confirm. Brother Thomas seemed quite serious about the invitation. Can I come too? The boy asks eagerly. You consider. A visit to the monastery would be educational for William, exposing him to a world beyond the farm and village, and having your son witness your role as advisor could only strengthen his respect for the family's pig farming expertise. We'll see, you say, which is neither a yes nor a no. Tudor parenting is not given to firm promises about future treats or opportunities, knowing how easily circumstances can change. After the meal, as darkness falls early on the winter day, the family gathers by the fire for the evening's activities. Tonight, instead of the usual quiet work, there's a sense of celebration that calls for stories. Tell us about grandfather and the pig race, William requests, settling cross-legged on the floor near your stool. This is a family favourite, the tale of how your father once raced a prize pig against the squire's champion at a village fair and won a silver penny that helped the family through a hard winter. Like many Tudor family stories, it combines practical information about pig handling with entertainment and a subtle lesson about cleverness overcoming disadvantage. Well, you begin, settling into the storyteller's rhythm. It was the Lammas Fair, the summer I turned 10. The children listen raptly, even though they've heard the story many times before. Tudor entertainment is largely oral and repetitive, with familiar tales gaining rather than losing value through retelling. Even Eleanor, spinning by the fire, smiles at the familiar narrative. As you reach the climax of the story, where your father's supposedly lazy pig suddenly demonstrates unexpected speed, little Mary bursts into delighted giggles. Her joy is infectious, and soon the whole family is laughing. It's a rare moment of pure pleasure in the demanding rhythm of Tudor farm life. Tomorrow will bring more snow clearing, animal tending, and preparation for the eventual thaw and the work it will bring. But tonight, warmed by the fire and the monastery's unexpected generosity, you allow yourself to simply enjoy your family's company. The next morning dawns clear and noticeably warmer. When you step outside to check the pigs, you're greeted by the steady drip of melting snow from the cottage eaves. The thaw has begun in earnest. This brings its own challenges. Melting snow means mud, flooded pathways, and potential damage to structures if the melt is too rapid. Tudor farmers view thaws with mixed feelings: relief at the end of snowbound isolation, concern about the practical problems it creates. The hog bog is already showing signs of the changing conditions. The snow inside the pen has compacted and begun to melt, creating a sloppy mixture with the ever-present mud and pig waste. The animals don't mind. Pigs are naturally drawn to wet, muddy environments, but it makes your work of feeding and checking them more unpleasant. "Mabel's looking better," William observes as you both struggle through the muck to distribute the morning feed. The injured sow is indeed moving more freely, her wound healing well. She'll be ready for spring breeding, you agree, mentally calculating the timing. If bred in early spring, Mabel would farrow in summer when conditions are best for piglet survival. This constant planning, thinking seasons ahead, balancing immediate needs against future opportunities, is central to successful Tudor farming. Nothing happens without consideration of its place in the annual cycle of growth, harvest, and renewal. As you finish the morning pig chores, you notice a figure approaching along the path from the village. The melting snow makes identification difficult at a distance, but as they draw closer, you recognize John Parker, son of Richard Parker, one of the wealthier farmers in the parish. "Or Master Fletcher," John calls in greeting as he reaches the edge of your cleared yard. He's a sturdy young man of about 16, already working his father's substantial holdings as preparation for eventually inheriting them. "John," you acknowledge, wiping your muddy hands on your jerkin. "What brings you this way?" "Father sent me with a message," the youth explains. "There's to be a parish meeting tonight at the church house. All farmers are asked to attend." This is unexpected but not surprising. Parish meetings are a regular feature of Tudor community governance, addressing everything from road maintenance to poor relief to local disputes. After a significant event like the Great Snow, a meeting to assess damage and coordinate recovery efforts is logical. "Did your father mention the purpose?" you ask. John shakes his head. "Only that it concerns the monastery and that all tenant farmers should attend." This specific focus raises your interest. Meetings about monastery matters usually involve rent adjustments, land use regulations, or similar practical concerns. But given the current rumours about the king's interest in monastic wealth, it could be something more significant. "I'll be there," you assure John. "Please thank your father for sending word." After the young man departs, continuing his rounds to other outlying farms, you return to the cottage to inform Eleanor of the meeting. "The monastery?" she asks, immediately grasping the potential importance. "Do you think it's about the dissolution rumours? Perhaps, you allow, or simply about the rent reduction and how long it will apply?" Eleanor nods thoughtfully. "Either way, we should know where things stand. The uncertainty is worse than bad news." This pragmatic approach to potential trouble is characteristic of Tudor thinking. Better to face problems directly than waste energy on fruitless worry. The day passes in the usual tasks, now complicated by the thawing conditions. Paths that were relatively easy to traverse when frozen solid become treacherous mudslides. Water must be carefully managed to prevent flooding in the hog bog and around the cottage. Firewood, partially buried in melting snow, must be rescued and dried before it becomes too wet to burn effectively. By late afternoon, the monastery bells ring for vespers, reminding you of the approaching meeting time. Parish gatherings typically occur after the workday, but before full darkness makes travel dangerous. "I should prepare," you tell Eleanor, setting aside the harness you've been mending. Preparation involves practical matters, changing into slightly less muddy clothes, ensuring the pigs are secured for the night, but also mental readiness. Tudor parish meetings can be contentious, with different interests competing for resources or advantage. As a moderately successful pig farmer but still a tenant rather than a landowner, you occupy a middle position in the village hierarchy. "Take the new cap," Eleanor suggests, handing you the woolen head covering she knitted last autumn. It's not fancy by any means, but it's less worn than your everyday one. Appearance matters in Tudor social gatherings, with clothing signalling both practical prosperity and proper respect for the occasion. The walk to the village is challenging in the fading light, with mud sucking at your boots and partially melted snow hiding unexpected holes or stones. You maintain a careful pace, aware that a sprained ankle or worse would be disastrous for the farm's operation. The church house, a building adjacent to the parish church used for community functions, is already crowded when you arrive. Tallow candles provide meagre illumination, their smoky light casting long shadows on the whitewashed walls. The smell is a complex mixture of wet wool, wood smoke, tallow, and the unwashed bodies of farmers gathered in an enclosed space. You spot Henry Cook and make your way toward him, exchanging brief greetings with other neighbours as you pass. Tudor social interactions in such settings are typically reserved, particularly before the official business begins. "Any idea what this is about?" you ask Henry quietly, settling onto the bench beside him. He shrugs slightly. "Steward Blackwell is here, and the parish priest. Something important, I'd wager." Before you can respond, the murmur of conversation dies down as Steward Blackwell steps forward. As the monastery's representative in day-to-day dealings with tenants, he holds significant authority in the parish. "Good people of Winchcombe," he begins, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet room. "Thank you for attending despite the difficult conditions. We have matters of importance to discuss." There's a rustle of anticipation through the gathered farmers. Tudor common folk are accustomed to announcements from authority affecting their lives, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. "First," Steward Blackwell continues, "the Lord Abbot wishes me to confirm that the 1/3 reduction in quarter rent will apply to the upcoming payment only. The summer quarter will return to normal rates, God willing." This clarification meets with murmurs of acceptance. A single quarter's reduction is still significant, and few had expected it to continue indefinitely. Second, regarding the damage caused by the great snow, the monastery will provide timber at reduced cost for repairs to any structures that suffered harm. Those needing such assistance should report to me after the meeting. This is another unexpected generosity, as timber is valuable and strictly controlled. More murmurs, these of appreciation, pass through the crowd. Finally, and here Steward Blackwell's voice takes on a more serious tone, "I must address the rumours that have reached even our remote parish concerning the King's Commissioners and the potential dissolution of monasteries." The room falls completely silent. This direct acknowledgement of the rumours you've all been discussing privately is startling. Tudor authority figures typically avoid addressing controversial topics in public settings. His Grace the Abbot wishes it known that Winchcombe Abbey has received no visitation from the commissioners, nor does he anticipate such. The abbey's standing with His Majesty is secure, and its management of lands and tenants has been deemed exemplary. You exchange a quick glance with Henry Cook. This confident assertion contradicts what you've heard about commissioners at nearby Hales Abbey. Either the steward is misinformed, or he's deliberately presenting a more positive picture than reality warrants. Nevertheless, Steward Blackwell continues, in these changing times, His Grace believes it prudent to demonstrate the Abbey's value to both Crown and community. To that end, he has instructed me to announce several initiatives. What follows is a series of proposals clearly designed to strengthen the monastery's position: expanded charitable work in the parish, improvements to the roads connecting abbey lands to market towns, a new programme to identify promising boys from tenant families for education at the monastery school. Additionally, and here the steward's gaze seems to find you specifically in the crowd, the abbey will be enhancing its farming enterprises, particularly in livestock. Master Fletcher has been invited to consult on improvements to our pig breeding program, and similar expertise will be sought in other areas. This public acknowledgement brings a few curious glances your way. Being singled out in such a gathering is both an honour and a potential source of neighbour envy. You maintain a carefully neutral expression, neither proud nor falsely humble. The steward concludes with an exhortation to loyalty and continued hard work, followed by a blessing from the parish priest. As the formal portion of the meeting ends, the gathered farmers break into small conversational groups discussing the announcements and their implications. "Interesting," Henry comments beside you. The abbey seems nervous, despite the steward's confidence. "These initiatives come at considerable cost," you observe quietly. "Opening storehouses, reducing rents, providing timber, not the actions of an institution certain of its future." Henry nods slightly. "My cousin at Tewkesbury says their abbey is doing similar, suddenly becoming the most generous landlord in memory." This pattern confirms your suspicion that the monasteries are indeed worried about dissolution, despite public assurances to the contrary. The question is whether their efforts to demonstrate value will sway the king and his commissioners. Before you can discuss further, Steward Blackwell approaches your bench. "Master Fletcher," he acknowledges you with a slight nod. "A moment of your time, if you please." Henry gives you a meaningful look before tactfully moving away to join another conversation group. Private discussions with the steward are significant and potentially advantageous. "Master Steward," you respond, rising respectfully. "The abbot wishes to extend his personal invitation for you to visit the monastery farm next week," the steward says without preamble. "Tuesday would be suitable if the weather holds. You may bring your son if you wish. The abbot believes in encouraging the next generation of skilled farmers." This formal invitation, delivered by the steward himself, is a step beyond Brother Thomas's casual suggestion. It represents official recognition of your farming expertise, a rare honour for a tenant. "I am honoured by His Grace's interest," you reply carefully. "Tuesday would be acceptable, weather permitting." "Excellent." The steward appears satisfied. "Brother Thomas will meet you at the monastery gate at Terce. The abbot may wish to speak with you personally after you've examined the pig enterprise." This additional detail, the possibility of a direct meeting with the abbot, is even more surprising. Tudor social hierarchies rarely allow for such cross-class interactions, except in specific ceremonial contexts. After the steward moves on to speak with other farmers, you find yourself approached by several neighbours, curious about this special attention. You downplay it modestly, as Tudor social norms require, but there's no hiding the significance of the invitation. "The abbot himself," Richard Parker comments, having overheard part of your conversation with the steward. As one of the more prosperous farmers, Parker is both a neighbour and a potential rival for monastery favour. "You've risen in the world, Fletcher. Just pig talk," you respond with deliberate humility. "Nothing of great importance." Parker's expression suggests he doesn't quite believe this diminishment, but he nods acceptance of your modest stance. Still, an opportunity few receive. Make good use of it. This mixture of congratulation and subtle warning is typical of Tudor social interactions, where advancement is both admired and regarded with some suspicion by peers. The meeting gradually disperses as farmers head home, eager to return before full darkness makes the muddy paths treacherous. You walk part of the way with Henry Cook and several others, the conversation turning to practical matters of farm recovery after the snow. By the time you reach your cottage, night has fully fallen. A small light glows from the single window. Eleanor has left a rushlight burning to guide you home. Rushlights, made by dipping the pithy centre of rushes in animal fat, are cheaper than candles and commonly used by Tudor farmers for basic illumination. She's waiting up, spinning by the light while the children sleep on their straw pallets. The cottage is warm, the fire carefully maintained at just the right level, not too hot, which would waste precious fuel, but enough to keep the winter chill at bay. "What news?" she asks quietly as you remove your mud-caked boots. You summarize the meeting, including the steward's reassurances about the monastery's security and the various initiatives announced. Her face remains thoughtful as she listens, her hands continuing their steady work with the wool and spindle. "And the abbot wants to see you Tuesday," she concludes, focusing on the most personally significant information. "With William. If the weather permits, you qualify. Tudor plans are always contingent on conditions beyond human control." "It's an honour," she says, setting aside her spinning. "But I wonder at the timing. This is why you value Eleanor's partnership so deeply. She sees beyond the immediate prestige to question motives and implications, just as you do. The monastery needs allies among its tenants, you suggest. If the dissolution comes, having prominent local farmers speak well of the abbey's management might influence how the king's commissioners view it." Eleanor nods slowly. "And if the dissolution doesn't come, they've built stronger ties to their most productive tenants. Either way, they benefit. As do we," you point out. "The abbot's favour means protection, opportunities, perhaps better land if any becomes available." This practical assessment of advantage is characteristic of Tudor thinking. Relationships with authority are evaluated not just on emotional terms, but for their concrete benefits. "William will need proper clothes," Eleanor says, already turning to practical matters, "and we should bring a gift, a small piglet perhaps, not the spotted male we owe as rent, but another." The suggestion makes sense. Tudor social interactions at all levels involve gift exchange, establishing and reinforcing bonds of obligation and gratitude. A gift to the monastery would acknowledge the honour of the invitation while demonstrating both your prosperity and humility. The female with the black spot might do, you agree. She's healthy but smaller than the others. We can spare her without much loss. With this decided, you bank the fire for the night and prepare for bed. The straw mattress, cold at first, gradually warms with your combined body heats. Outside, the temperature is dropping again with the clear night sky, likely refreezing the day's melt into treacherous ice by morning. Eleanor's breathing soon settles into the rhythm of sleep, but you find yourself still awake, mind turning over the day's events, the monastery's sudden generosity, the steward's confident assertions despite contrary rumours, the unexpected honour of an invitation to advise the abbot. Something is changing in the carefully ordered world of Tudor England. The religious reforms, the king's break with Rome, the scrutiny of monastic wealth, all distant political matters that nevertheless reach into your life as a simple pig farmer. What will the coming months bring? Dissolution of the monastery's new landlord's changed obligations, or will Winchcombe Abbey survive the king's commissioners, continuing its centuries-old stewardship of the land you farm? These questions have no immediate answers, and worrying serves no purpose. Tudor pragmatism asserts itself, and you turn your thoughts to more immediate concerns: the condition of the paths after tonight's refreeze, the health of Mabel's healing leg, the preparation of William for his first visit to the monastery. Gradually, sleep approaches. Your last conscious thought is a simple prayer, not the formal Latin of church services, but the direct appeal of a farmer to whatever divine power might be listening. Keep my family safe. keep my pigs healthy, give me the wisdom to navigate whatever changes come. Outside, the night is still and cold under a canopy of stars. The monastery on the hill is dark except for a few windows where monks maintain the night offices of prayer. The village is silent, its inhabitants sleeping after the day's labour, and across the frozen landscape, thousands of other Tudor farmers like you rest briefly before dawn brings renewal of the eternal cycle of work, survival, and adaptation to changing times. The Tudor pig farmer sleeps, his dreams perhaps filled with fat, healthy swine, generous harvests, and a future secure against the winds of change sweeping through his world. Tuesday dawns clear and mild, a perfect January thaw. The remaining snow melts steadily under a strengthening sun, turning paths to mud, but clearing the way for travel. It seems the weather, at least, favours your visit to the monastery. "Are you nervous?" Eleanor asks as she helps William into his best clothes, which are simply his everyday garments, freshly washed and mended where needed. Tudor farming families rarely own special clothing for occasional use. They simply ensure their regular attire is as presentable as possible for important occasions. "A bit," the boy admits, standing still as his mother adjusts his woolen cap. At 9, he's old enough to understand the significance of visiting the monastery and meeting the abbot, yet young enough to be awed by the prospect. "Remember your manners," she instructs, brushing a speck of straw from his shoulder. "Bow to the abbot and any senior monks. Speak only when spoken to, and stay close to your father at all times." William nods solemnly. These instructions aren't new. Tudor children are taught proper behaviour towards social superiors from an early age, but the reminder emphasises the importance of the day. "And you?" Eleanor turns to you, giving your appearance a critical assessment. "Are you ready to advise an abbot on pig breeding?" There's a hint of teasing in her voice, but genuine concern too. This visit represents an unusual opportunity for a tenant farmer, one that could affect your family's standing in the community and relationship with the monastery for years to come. "I know pigs," you say simply. "The abbot may know scripture and Latin, but I doubt he knows how to select a breeding sow or castrate a young boar." Eleanor smiles at this earthy confidence. It's one of your strengths as a farmer. You respect authority in its proper sphere, but know the value of your own expertise, earned through years of practical experience. The selected piglet, a small female with a distinctive black spot on her flank, has been secured in a wicker carrying basket. It's a simple but effective transportation method with small air holes allowing the animal to breathe while preventing escape. The piglet squeals occasionally in protest but seems generally comfortable. "A fitting gift?" you ask, gesturing to the basket. Eleanor nods approval. "Healthy, but not our best. Generous without appearing extravagant." This careful calculation of gift-giving is typical in Tudor society, where presents serve not just as tokens of goodwill, but as statements of social position and aspiration. Too mean a gift would suggest disrespect. Too lavish a one might imply presumption above your station. After a simple breakfast of bread and ale, you prepare for departure. The monastery bells ring out for prime, the first office of the day, reminding you to time your journey to arrive by terce, as instructed. "God be with you both," Eleanor says, standing at the cottage door with Agnes and little Mary. It's the traditional Tudor farewell, acknowledging the dangers inherent in any journey, however short. "And with you," you respond formally, before adding in a lighter tone, "We'll be back before dark, God willing. Don't sell any pigs while I'm gone." This small joke earns a smile from Eleanor and a giggle from the girls. Humour in Tudor households tends toward the practical and situational, often revolving around the daily work that defines family life. The walk to the monastery takes about an hour at William's pace, with the piglet basket adding to the journey's challenge. The recent thaw has left the paths muddy but passable, and the mild temperature makes the walk pleasant by winter standards. "Father," William asks as you approach the village, "why does the abbot want to talk about our pigs? Doesn't the monastery have its own pig keeper?" It's a perceptive question, showing the boys' growing understanding of farming roles and hierarchies. "They do," you confirm, "but sometimes fresh eyes see things differently. Our pigs have done well these past years. Healthy litters, good growth, few diseases. The monastery has noticed." William considers this thoughtfully, like when you had me help fix the hogbog even though I'm just learning. "Exactly," you agree, pleased at his understanding. Sometimes a new perspective helps, even from someone with less experience. The village is bustling with activity as you pass through. The thaw has released people from snowbound isolation, and everyone seems eager to resume normal life. Women gather at the communal well, collecting water and exchanging news. Men repair damage from the snow or prepare tools for the approaching spring work. Children chase each other through muddy puddles, their mothers' calls to be careful largely ignored. Several villagers greet you with more deference than usual, having heard of your invitation to the monastery. Your status has been temporarily elevated by the abbot's recognition, and Tudor social interactions are keenly attuned to such subtle shifts in standing. Beyond the village, the land rises toward the monastery on its commanding hill. Winchcombe Abbey has stood for centuries, its stone buildings visible for miles around. Unlike your humble wattle and daub cottage, the monastery represents permanence, wealth, and power, both spiritual and temporal. "It's so big," William murmurs as the full complex comes into view. The monastery is indeed impressive, a collection of stone buildings centered around the great church, with cloisters, dormitories, kitchens, storehouses, and workshops arranged in ordered patterns. Surrounding these core buildings are the working areas of the monastery farm, barns, animal pens, gardens, orchards, and fields, all managed for maximum productivity. As you approach the main gate, William steps slow, intimidated by the massive stone archway and the monastic buildings beyond. You place a reassuring hand on his shoulder, guiding him forward. The piglet in its basket seems to sense the boy's anxiety, falling silent as if in sympathy. Brother Thomas is waiting at the gate as promised, his brown habit clean and neat, a stark contrast to your travel-stained working clothes, however carefully selected. "Master Fletcher," he greets you with a slight bow, and young Master Fletcher, welcome to Winchcombe Abbey. His Grace is pleased you could come. "The honour is ours, brother," you respond with appropriate deference. Tudor social interactions follow careful scripts, with each participant aware of their relative position and the expected forms of address. "I see you've brought a gift," Brother Thomas observes, nodding toward the basket where the piglet has begun to stir again. A small token of appreciation for His Grace's interest, you confirm, the formal phrasing feeling slightly awkward on your tongue. Tudor farmers are not accustomed to courtly speech, but certain occasions demand an attempt at more refined expression. "Most generous," Brother Thomas acknowledges. "If you'll follow me, I'll first show you to the monastery farm where you can see our pig enterprise and offer your thoughts. Afterward, the abbot will receive you." As you pass through the gate into the monastery grounds, William stares wide-eyed at the bustling activity. Despite their reputation for quiet contemplation, monasteries are economic powerhouses, and Winchcombe Abbey is no exception. Lay workers hurry about various tasks, monks oversee operations or move between buildings for their religious duties, and the sounds of craft work, hammering, sawing, metal being worked, create a constant background hum. Brother Thomas leads you along a well-maintained path toward the agricultural area of the monastery. He points out various buildings and explains their functions, clearly proud of the abbey's organisation and productivity. Our granary, he indicates a substantial stone building, holds enough grain to feed the monastery and provide charity through a full year of poor harvest. William listens attentively, clearly impressed by the scale of operations. Your own farm's storage, a small wooden chest for precious items like flour, and a simple root cellar dug into the ground, seems pitiful by comparison. Finally, you reach the monastery's pig enclosure. Unlike your humble hog bog, this is a substantial operation. Multiple pens built of solid timber, a dedicated feed storage building, and a small cottage for the swineherd who tends the animals full time. Master Turner, Brother Thomas calls to a middle-aged man sorting feed near one of the pens. Our guests have arrived. The monastery swineherd straightens, assessing you with the shrewd gaze of one craftsman evaluating another. There's a hint of defensiveness in his posture, understandable, as your presence implies some criticism of his methods. Master Fletcher is here at the abbot's request to offer suggestions for improving our breeding program, Brother Thomas explains diplomatically, not to replace your expertise, but to complement it. This careful framing seems to ease Turner's concern somewhat. Tudor professional pride is strong, but so is the hierarchy of monastic authority. If the abbot has requested outside advice, the swineherd must accept it, however reluctantly. We've had trouble with small litters these past 2 seasons, Turner admits, warming slightly as he recognises a fellow pig expert, and more stillbirths than seems natural. You set down the piglet basket and move toward the nearest pen, your farmer's eye immediately assessing the animals inside. The monastery pigs are the same basic type as yours, the long-legged, bristly Tudor breed that resembles wild boars more than modern pigs. But there are subtle differences in their condition that concern you. May I? You ask, gesturing toward the pen gate. Turner nods, and you enter, moving slowly to avoid startling the animals. William watches from outside, the piglet basket at his feet, while Brother Thomas observes with polite interest. The sows in this pen are decent specimens, but show signs of problems you've learned to recognise through years of experience. Their bristles lack lustre, and their movements seem slightly lethargic. Most concerning, their body condition is uneven, some too thin, others carrying too much fat for optimal breeding. What do you feed them? You ask Turner, kneeling to examine one sow more closely. Kitchen waste from the monastery, acorns and beech nuts from the forest in season, some grain when needed, he lists. Standard fare for Tudor pigs, similar to your own feeding practices. And the boar? You look around, not seeing the breeding male who would typically be kept separate. In the far pen, Turner indicates, a big fellow, 3 years old now. You continue your examination, moving from pen to pen, asking questions and gradually forming a picture of the monastery's pig enterprise. It's substantially larger than your own, perhaps 30 breeding sows compared to your 2, with proportionally more piglets and fattening hogs. But size doesn't necessarily mean superior methods. After about an hour of investigation, you've identified several likely issues. The monastery boar is indeed impressive, a massive animal with good conformation, but he's being overused, servicing too many sows without adequate recovery time. The feeding regime, while seemingly appropriate, lacks certain elements you found beneficial, and most significantly, the pigs are kept too confined, without sufficient opportunity to forage naturally. "Well, Master Fletcher," Brother Thomas prompts as you exit the final pen, "what are your observations?" You gather your thoughts, aware that your response must balance honesty with diplomacy. Criticism of established monastery practices, even when requested, must be framed carefully. "Master Turner runs a fine operation," you begin, acknowledging the swineherd's skill. "But I see 3 areas where changes might improve breeding success." Turner listens with surprising openness as you explain your recommendations, rotating 2 or 3 boars rather than relying on a single one, supplementing the pig's diet with certain mineral-rich plants you found beneficial, and most importantly, allowing more forest foraging time even outside the traditional pannage season. "Our wild boar ancestors roamed freely," you explain, drawing on knowledge passed down through generations of pig keepers. "Confined pigs breed less successfully. Something about the movement and varied diet seems to encourage fertility." Brother Thomas nods thoughtfully. "This aligns with Aristotle's observations on animal nature, does it not? That creatures thrive best when allowed to express their natural behaviors." This unexpected scholarly perspective on your practical knowledge takes you by surprise. It's a reminder that monastery education encompasses both spiritual texts and classical learning that would be inaccessible to most Tudor farmers. "I haven't read Aristotle, brother, you admit. But my father and his father before him found that pigs allowed to root and forage produce larger, healthier litters." This reference to generational wisdom resonates with Tudor values of tradition and inherited knowledge. Even Turner, initially defensive, seems to consider your suggestions with growing interest. "We could expand the wooded area of the pig enclosure," he muses. "That grove beyond the current fence has good rooting ground. And perhaps acquire another boar or 2, Brother Thomas adds, from Master Fletcher's stock if he's willing to sell." This suggestion, purchasing breeding stock from your farm, goes beyond your expectations for the visit. It represents not just recognition of your expertise, but a potential economic opportunity. "I have a young boar nearly ready for breeding," you offer cautiously, "showing great promise from our best sow's last litter." The conversation continues in this practical vein with increasingly specific discussions of pig management techniques. William, after his initial shyness, begins to contribute occasional observations from his own experience helping with your pigs. His comments are simple but accurate, and you feel a swell of pride at his growing knowledge. Eventually, Brother Thomas checks the position of the sun. "The abbot will be available soon, but first, let's break our fast. You must be hungry after your journey and these discussions." This invitation to dine at the monastery is another honor, one that elevates your visit from mere agricultural consultation to social recognition. Tudor meals are highly structured by social class, with who eats what, where, and with whom carefully determined by status. You and William are led to the monastery's outer refectory, a dining hall for visitors and lay workers rather than the inner refectory reserved for monks. Still, it's a far grander space than you're accustomed to. A high-ceilinged room with long wooden tables and benches, windows allowing natural light, and a small fireplace providing warmth. The meal served is simple by monastery standards, but luxurious to a Tudor farmer. Fresh bread made from finely milled white flour, a portion of well-cooked fish, it being a day when meat is forbidden by religious custom, a small serving of preserved fruits and ale of superior quality to your home-brewed variety. William eyes the white bread with particular wonder. On your farm, bread is made from coarse, dark flour, the white variety being a luxury reserved for special occasions. He waits for your nod before taking a piece, his manners impeccable despite his obvious hunger. "The abbot will be pleased with your recommendations," Brother Thomas comments as you eat. He has a particular interest in improving all aspects of the monastery's productivity. In anticipation of the king's commissioners, you ask, the question slipping out before prudence can stop it. Brother Thomas's expression remains carefully neutral. His Grace believes in good stewardship regardless of external circumstances. But yes, demonstrating the abbey's value to the community and the crown has taken on additional importance in recent times. This diplomatic acknowledgement of the political realities facing monasteries is as close to a direct discussion of the dissolution threat as is likely in this setting. Tudor conversations about potentially dangerous topics often employ such careful phrasing, allowing shared understanding without explicit statements that could be deemed treasonous or heretical. After the meal, you retrieve the piglet basket from where it was safely stored during your inspection of the monastery pigs. The animal has settled during the wait, curled up comfortably in its temporary home. Brother Thomas leads you from the agricultural area toward the more formal central buildings of the monastery. William stays close beside you, clearly intimidated by the increasing grandeur of your surroundings. The simple wooden structures of the farm give way to stone buildings with architectural flourishes that speak of centuries of accumulated wealth and craftsmanship. The abbot receives visitors in the parlour, Brother Thomas explains as you approach a particularly imposing building. It's one of the few monastery spaces where regular conversation is permitted. This is a reference to the Benedictine rule of silence that governs much of monastic life. Another world entirely from the casual chatter of a farming household. The contrast between your daily existence and the ordered, rule-bound life of the monks has never been more apparent than in this moment. The parlour proves to be a modestly sized room with plastered and painted walls, a luxury compared to your cottage's bare wattle and daub, furnished with several wooden chairs, a table and a small writing desk. A fire burns in a proper stone fireplace, warming the space to a comfortable temperature rare in Tudor winter. "Please wait here," Brother Thomas instructs. "His Grace will join you shortly." Left alone with William, you take the opportunity to give last-minute reminders. Remember bow when the abbot enters, address him as Your Grace, answer questions truthfully but briefly. The boy nods nervously, his eyes darting around the unfamiliar surroundings. The piglet, in its basket, perhaps sensing the tension, gives a small grunt but remains otherwise quiet. After a few minutes, the door opens to admit Abbot Montague. He's a tall, thin man of about 60, with the scholarly stoop of one who has spent decades bent over manuscripts. His habit is the same brown wool as Brother Thomas's, but the quality of the fabric is noticeably finer, and he wears a pectoral cross of silver that glints in the firelight. You and William bow immediately, the gesture awkward but sincere. Tudor physical expressions of respect follow prescribed patterns, with depth of bow corresponding to the social distance between the parties. Master Fletcher, the abbot acknowledges you with a slight inclination of his head. And young Master Fletcher, welcome to Winchcombe Abbey. "Thank you for your Grace's invitation," you respond, the formal phrasing feeling stiff on your tongue. "We are honoured by your interest in our humble pig enterprise." "Not so humble, from what I hear," the abbot replies, moving to take the chair nearest the fire. He gestures for you and William to sit on the bench opposite, a courtesy that acknowledges your status as invited guests rather than petitioning tenants. Brother Thomas speaks highly of your breeding methods, and Brother Steward reports your rent payments are always prompt. This combination of agricultural and financial approval is typical of Tudor evaluations where moral worth and economic reliability are often conflated. A good farmer pays his rent on time. A tenant who falls behind is considered not just financially unreliable, but morally suspect. "We've brought a small token of appreciation," you say, indicating the piglet basket. "A female from our best sow's most recent litter. She shows promise for breeding." The abbot nods approval at this appropriate gift. Most generous. The monastery accepts with gratitude. With these formal exchanges complete, the conversation turns to more substantive matters. The abbot asks detailed questions about your observations of the monastery's pig enterprise and your recommendations for improvement. His knowledge of practical farming is surprisingly extensive for a man who has spent his adult life in religious scholarship. "Brother Thomas mentioned your suggestion about forest foraging," he notes, "an interesting return to natural methods rather than the more controlled feeding some modern agricultural writers advise." This reference to modern agricultural writers, likely texts from the continent that are circulating among educated landowners, highlights the gap between formal written knowledge and the practical experience of working farmers like yourself. Tudor England stands at a transition point between traditional methods passed down orally and newer approaches based on observation and experiment. "I can only speak to what works with our pigs, Your Grace," you respond carefully. "Each year that we've increased foraging time, we've seen larger litters and healthier piglets." The abbot seems pleased with this pragmatic approach. Results matter more than theories, in farming as in spiritual matters. This philosophical comment leads to a more general discussion of monastery lands and their management. The abbot explains his vision for increasing productivity while maintaining traditional stewardship values. It becomes increasingly clear that Winchcombe Abbey is positioning itself as an exemplary landlord and agricultural innovator, qualities that might help it survive the scrutiny of the King's commissioners. Throughout this conversation, William remains silent but attentive. You notice the abbot occasionally directing a kind glance his way, acknowledging the boy's presence without putting him under the pressure of direct questions. Eventually, the discussion returns to specific arrangements for cooperation between your farm and the monastery's pig enterprise. The abbot proposes purchasing your promising young boar, offering a fair price that would significantly ease your financial situation. Additionally, he suggests a formal role as occasional advisor to the monastery swineherd, with modest payment for your expertise. Such an arrangement would benefit both the abbey and your family, the abbot concludes. "Do you find these terms acceptable, Master Fletcher?" The offer is genuinely generous, providing both immediate income and ongoing connection to the powerful monastery. In the uncertain climate of potential dissolution, having such a relationship could prove valuable regardless of who eventually controls the abbey lands. "Most acceptable, Your Grace," you confirm. "I'm honoured by your confidence." With business concluded, the abbot rises, signalling the end of the audience. You and William stand immediately, bowing again as protocol requires. "Brother Thomas will see to the details," the abbot says, "and I believe he has something for young Master Fletcher before you depart." This unexpected mention brings a look of surprise to William's face. Tudor children rarely receive gifts from authority figures outside their immediate family. As you leave the parlour, Brother Thomas is waiting in the antechamber. He leads you back toward the monastery gate, explaining the practical arrangements for delivering your young boar and beginning your advisory role after the winter ends. Near the gate, he pauses. "The abbot mentioned a gift for the boy," he says, producing a small package wrapped in linen cloth. "A token of appreciation for his attentive behaviour today." William accepts the package with wide eyes, looking to you for permission before unwrapping it. Inside is a small book, an extraordinary gift in Tudor England, where books are expensive luxury items rarely owned by farming families. "It's a bestiary," Brother Thomas explains. "A book about animals, with pictures. The abbot thought it appropriate for a future pig farmer with an observant eye." The book is clearly not new. Its pages show signs of handling and the binding is somewhat worn, but it represents a value far beyond anything you could provide for your son. More importantly, it signifies the abbot's recognition of William's potential, a powerful endorsement in a society where advancement often depends on patronage from those in higher positions. "Thank you, brother," William manages, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please thank His Grace for me." The walk home feels considerably shorter than the journey to the monastery, despite carrying the empty piglet basket. William clutches his precious book, occasionally opening it to marvel at the colourful illustrations of animals, both familiar and fantastical. "A successful day," you observe as the cottage comes into view, smoke rising reassuringly from its chimney. William nods, his expression thoughtful. "Father, could I learn to read properly, to understand the words in the book, not just look at the pictures?" The question represents a potential turning point. Tudor literacy is limited, with formal education available primarily to the wealthy or those destined for the church. But basic reading is taught at the parish school for a small fee, and William has shown an aptitude for learning. "We'll see," you say, considering the practical implications. Reading takes time away from farm work, but perhaps during the quiet of winter, it's not a commitment, but it's not a refusal either. The monastery visit has opened a window to possibilities beyond the expected path of a pig farmer's son following his father's trade. Tudor society is changing, with new opportunities emerging alongside traditional ways of life. Eleanor and the girls are waiting anxiously for your return, eager to hear about the visit. As you approach, little Mary spots you first, running to meet you with excited calls that bring the others to the cottage door. "How was it?" Eleanor asks as you reach the yard. "Did you meet the abbot?" "We did," you confirm, smiling at her barely contained curiosity. "And he's buying our young boar, plus wants me to advise his swineherd come spring." This news brings a look of relief to Eleanor's face. The additional income will ease the constant financial pressure of tenant farming, providing a small buffer against the uncertainties of the coming year. "And look what I got," William exclaims, unable to contain his excitement any longer. He shows the book proudly, explaining the abbot's gift with a mixture of awe and delight. The family gathers around the cottage table as you recount the day's events in detail. Eleanor listens with particular attention to your description of the abbot's manner and the undercurrents of concern about the monastery's future. Agnes is fascinated by your description of the monastery buildings and the glimpse of a world beyond the village. Mary simply wants to know if the monastery pigs are as big as yours. "Bigger," you tell her with a smile, "but not as clever." As the winter afternoon fades toward evening, the family settles into its usual routine. The pigs must still be fed, the fire maintained, the evening meal prepared. Tudor daily life continues its rhythm regardless of unusual events or opportunities. But something has shifted in your perspective. The monastery visit has connected your small farm more directly to the broader currents of change flowing through Tudor England. The dissolution that seemed a distant political matter now has potential personal implications, for better or worse, depending on how events unfold. After the children are asleep, you sit with Eleanor by the fire, sharing the last of the ale and the more nuanced observations you didn't mention in front of the young ones. The abbot is worried, you conclude. For all his confidence in public, he's preparing for the possibility of dissolution. Eleanor nods thoughtfully. Why else make such efforts to demonstrate the monastery's value or build connections with reliable tenants? The question is whether it will be enough, you muse, watching the fire's dying embers. The king seems determined from all we hear. And if dissolution comes, Eleanor asks the question that has hovered between you for months. You consider carefully before answering. Then we adapt, as Tudor farmers have always done. Whether our rent goes to an abbot or a new lord, pigs still need tending, and we know pigs. This pragmatic approach, focusing on what can be controlled rather than distant political decisions, has served your family well through previous upheavals. It represents the resilience that characterizes Tudor rural life, the capacity to bend without breaking in the face of change. Eleanor reaches for your hand, her practical nature reasserting itself. Whatever comes, we face it together, as we always have. The simple affirmation carries the weight of years of partnership through hardship and occasional joy. Tudor marriage at its best is a practical alliance, with emotional bonds strengthened through shared struggle and achievement rather than romantic notions. Outside, the winter night settles over the farm. The pigs sleep in their newly repaired hog bog. The leftover snow melts gradually in the slightly warmer temperatures, and the monastery bell rings distantly for Compline, the final prayer office of the day. Inside your cottage, warmed by the banked fire and the close presence of your family, you find a moment of peace amid the uncertainties of Tudor England in transition. Tomorrow will bring its challenges. It always does for a pig farmer living close to the margin of subsistence. But tonight, with a new connection to the monastery established and a small economic boost secured, the future seems slightly less precarious. As sleep approaches, your thoughts drift to William and his new book. Perhaps there is a different path possible for him, not abandoning the family tradition of pig farming, but enhancing it with the power of reading, of access to knowledge beyond what can be passed down orally. Tudor society is gradually opening such possibilities even for common folk, as the old medieval certainties give way to new ways of thinking and living. These contemplations fade as sleep takes hold. The Tudor pig farmer rests, his body weary from the day's journey, his mind quieted by the simple satisfaction of having represented his family well in an important encounter. Whatever changes the dissolution may bring to the land you farm, the fundamental skills and knowledge you possess remain valuable. Pigs still need tending, breeding still requires expertise, and the ancient partnership between farmer and livestock continues regardless of who holds title to the land. In the quiet of your cottage, surrounded by your sleeping family, you find the resilience that has sustained countless generations of Tudor farmers through wars, plagues, famines, and political upheavals. The particular challenges of your time may be unique, but the human capacity to adapt and endure remains constant. And so, as the last embers of the fire glow softly in the darkness, you drift into dreams perhaps not so different from those of modern people. Dreams of security for your family, success in your work, and a future slightly better than the present. The details differ across the centuries, but the essence remains remarkably similar. Sleep well, Tudor pig farmer. Your story, the daily struggle for survival, the careful navigation of social hierarchies, the quiet pride in specialized knowledge, represents an essential thread in the complex tapestry of human experience. In your seemingly ordinary life lies the extraordinary resilience that has carried humanity through its most challenging transitions. As your breathing deepens into the rhythm of sleep, the centuries between your Tudor cottage and the modern bedroom where this story is heard seem to collapse. For a moment, across the vast distance of time, there is a connection, a recognition of shared humanity, despite the profound differences in daily experience. Rest now as your listener drifts towards sleep as well, both of you finding peace in the darkness, separated by time but united in the fundamental human need for stories, for understanding, and for the comfort of knowing that others before us have faced uncertainty and found their way forward. In your small corner of Tudor England, under a sky filled with stars unchanged by the passing centuries, sleep claims you at last.